good? How we doing today? It's been a while since I've streamed on this channel, but shout out to you guys for being here. Those of you guys that made it, all right? And those of you guys that be checking this out on the after show, do not forget to hit the like button. Today is going to be a very interesting conversation that we're going to have, and it has a lot to do with Africa, particularly the country Sudan, all right? For those of you guys don't know, there is a Sudanese civil war going on right now, and it's not really much of a civil war, more like a conflict going on between two different generals, all right? The easiest way you can break this down is you have a general from the actual army, the Sudanese army itself. All right, and I'm gonna butcher his name, so we're gonna call him the national Sudanese National Forces. All right, they're with the army there. I'm gonna pull up his name in just a second. But then you also have the another general or another individual, right? He's the commander and the leading forces of the what's called the RSF. Now the RSF is basically like, if Wagner Group, which is the private military corporation of Russia, was able to have such a dominant force and funding that they were almost equivalent to the Russian military, the Russian standing professional military. And in some ways, Wagner Group is kind of like that, right? Because Wagner Group, they have not only have the funding from the military government, which if we look at the RSF compared to the Sudan government, and they're actually being funded by it's not the Treasury, but is it the Ministry of Defense? Whoever handles the funding of the military, they're basically sinking their teeth into that budget. So it's if like let's bring it to the U.S. right? If the U.S. Blackwater is the private military organization. I know we have multiple private military organizations. Hit Cats Holler, shout out to you. Welcome to the chat. I think you have the link. It's still the same one. So when we transition off of this topic into the Biafran War, which is actually similar because the Biafran War was a war between two generals, right? Two generals, one on the Igbo side of things and one who represented the Nigerian government, and they clashed it out for independence. Unfortunately, our nation lost, but someday we'll rise again. But we'll get you in there. We'll get you in there. We'll have that conversation. But let's getting back to it, right? So if the Blackwater in the United States had as much power as the United States Army, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force combined, that's the situation they're facing in Sudan right now, where you have the private army, which was funded by the United Emirates, right? Which is like one of those you think United Emirates, a lot of people think Dubai and all those fake fancy stuff that a lot of these guys tend to put out, right? So that government started out and they gave that the RSF their initial funding, and what ended up happening is they actually got powerful enough to where the standing president at the time, before the two generals came to war, the standing president at the time was actually overthrown. And what ended up happening was, while he was president, he was actually feeding power to the RSF, which is the private military forces, versus the national forces, and he wanted to have both of those forces consolidated under one dictatorial rule. But here's the problem with that, right? The problem with that is, well, hang on. These two generals then realized we got power. And we know that whoever commands the army, they actually control the country. And that's true. Whoever controls the military controls the country, right? But typically the way it's supposed to work in normal circumstances is the military is supposed to back a civilian leadership to keep things fair and square so no one gets too crazy. Unfortunately, these two generals realized that, well, hang on, we got more power. I mean, I got the private forces with the RSF, and you got the national forces with the Sudan military. How about we just come together and kick out this bozo? And that's exactly what they ended up doing. So they came together, they kicked out the standing president, and now what ends up happening was they were supposed to be a plan laid out for about 10 years to slowly transition the government back under civilian rule, right? So we're not really going to get into why the original president got dethroned or pretty much had a coup d'etat funded and backed against him. That's a different story. But what we're going to talk about is a little bit why is this going on, right? Because there was supposed to be a 10-year plan laid out, And essentially, what they were supposed to do is incorporate the RSF, which is the private military group, into the original standing army of the Sudanese government, right? But the problem started happening when the original commander, and actually, I think it'll do us best to find his name here, and I'm gonna pull up his names here. All right, Buhan is one of them, but is the other guy that I'm trying to figure out his name is General Buhan and Fatah Buhan, and then the other one is it's Mohammed Hamdan. All right, so we got Buhan and Hamdan. Buhan is the Sudanese military power, and Hamdan is the RSF paramilitary forces, right? So essentially, Hamdan and Buhan were supposed to come up with an agreement to go ahead and not only incorporate what's it called, Mohammed Hamdan's forces into the original standing army, but it was to basically then formulate a peaceful transition into civilian rule. But what ended up starting to happen is the national army, which is Sudan's national army, Buhan, he basically had other ideas. And his other ideas were, how about we shorten that 10-year transition span to 3 years? How about we do that? And then Hamdan was like, hey, hang on, wait a minute now. It's not going to take 3 years to not only incorporate our private paramilitary group into your national forces, but it's also definitely not going to take 3 years to go ahead and institute a civilian government. We need a little bit more time. We just performed a coup d'etat. We just overthrew the previous ruler of this country, and now we're two generals, one private, one with the public military, and you're saying for us to be into your group is gonna take 3 years? No. We need at least 10 to 15 years to make this happen. So what the General Hamdan started to understand was, hey, wait a minute, maybe Buhan, the general of the Sudanese National Forces, basically he probably wants to rule Sudan by himself. That's probably the plan he was getting at. He probably didn't have any plan to actually unite the country under civilian leadership. I think he wants to be the dictatorial leadership. And so Hamdan is basically sitting there saying, all right, well, that's not happening. And if anything, we're actually going to oppose what's going on. All right. So now what ended up happening is tension started to rise, and these guys started to engage with what I call tactical escalation, right? Basically either trying to get the civilian public to turn against the private military forces, or sending certain propaganda elements out there, things of that nature, right? So they're getting civilians involved to try to support each side. And here's the main issue, right? Both military operations are funded by the Sudanese government. All right. So if anything, if you look at Hamdan's forces with the RSF, it's actually kind of like a military parasite off of the government, just because they are being funded by the same State Department. So it's kind of like they're feeding funds and things like that. And the original plan was to incorporate, but now it's not happening. So something's got to give. But it's not just them feeding off of the Sudanese government, right? But what ends up happening is actually the General Hamdan he actually has his own kind of network. Actually, he spent time under the supervision of the United Arab Emirates. I'm saying that wrong or saying that right. Emirates, right? Under the UAE, right? He got the initial funding, the weapons, the planes, and the money that they needed. But what Hamdan also managed to do while in Sudan is also secure a lot of the private sector, right? Meaning their oil, a lot of their natural resources, a lot of things that they had going on down there. General Hamdan made sure that he had a firm grip into a lot of that. Now, some of y'all might be thinking, whoa, that's weird. Why is it that a general has his hands dipped in capitalism? That doesn't make any sense. Shouldn't the general be focused on the military and listen to orders? Well, again, he's a private guy, all right, private military, paramilitary general. That's basically what he is, all right. So they haven't been officially incorporated into the Sudanese military. So in that case, you can see it as some kind of nepotist, kind of corruption situation going on. How they were able to dominate so many resources, and with the resources comes the domination of the people who are living around those areas with natural resources. People who depend on that for work, people who depend on that for just living, people who depend on all of that. So you can see how that starts to naturally divide the civilian populace, right? Where you're looking on the other hand with General Buhan, he's primarily funded by the Treasury, but don't get it twisted. He also has got his hands dipped in a lot of these pies too as well. There's also a lot of corruption going on with that. So both of these guys are super corrupt. We got one that wants power, the other one's saying no, and now they're clashing it out. There are a bunch of civilians' lives that are currently going to be at risk with this situation going on right now. There are about 16,000 Americans that have yet to be evacuated out of this whole mess. Now, what I would say the Biden administration did better than what the Obama administration did, especially when it came to embassies and United States. And you guys remember the last time we had a embassy issue. Benghazi, Benghazi, Benghazi. You can't say that word anymore. But we had a previous embassy issue where the populace were going mad, and that didn't turn out too great for the United States. And we're seeing the way they handled themselves with this Sudanese conflict, how they were able to go in, take action, and secure as many security personnel as they could, embassy personnel, necessary staffs, right, with the proper clearance. I mean, they're not going out and getting every single American out of there, but people with the proper clearance that are working with government are the ones that have been evacuated from those situations. So you see the government learning from the Benghazi mistake, and they're acting pretty quickly on that. However, they can't save everybody. There's still a bunch of Americans who have nothing to do with the United States government that are still trapped in these countries right now. And they're telling them, hey, there are other backwards route that you can go into other countries and maybe fly out of their airport. But if you're expecting the United States military to come in, swoop in, and secure an airport just for United States citizens to fly through, that can't happen, because believe it or not, United States doesn't have as much influence in Sudan as we think. Matter of fact, we're trying to get influence in that country. A lot of countries actually want influence in Sudan right now, because not only because of their resources, but their geographic location in the world right now. They're damn near the Horn of Africa, which is very, very important location, especially when we talk about trade and billions of dollars worth of oil passing through left and right. Okay, so Sudan is very important. So a lot of countries, they have a vested interest in seeing how a lot of this stuff plays out. The big problem is Russia. Now here's the thing. A lot of people are like, whoa, what do you mean Russia? It's because Russia right now, what y'all gotta understand is Russia's been doing a lot of things. Russia and China, but we're gonna focus on Russia since they're actually funding both sides of the civil war right now. Russia has slowly been gaining influence in a lot of African nations. For those of you guys who don't actually know yet, Russia and China, I don't know what kind of new policies they have going on, but one of it is to gain as much influence in Africa as possible, whether they're using Wagner Group in Niger, in Burkina Faso, in other they're even in Nigeria. They're Wagner troops in Nigeria right now. A lot of these guys, what they've been doing under the noses of the West is not only securing infrastructure, but also supporting certain elements that are pretty much weeding out what do you call it? Not government officials that have to do with democracy. So what I'm saying is they're helping kind of make sure the status quo in a lot of these countries stay the same. So if there are politicians, there could be a potential threat, or there are potential groups that pop out to oppose some of these laws that we're seeing out here when it comes to our resources being pillaged, right? A lot of these groups are there to kind of instill order, right? So you wouldn't be a surprise when you see governments of Nigeria hiring Wagner groups to come into the country and take care of certain situations in that country. It certainly happens. We're seeing it in Niger, we're seeing it in Burkina Faso, because they kicked out the French Foreign Legion, and now they're bringing in Wagner forces to take care of the terrorist issue they have going on in there. The problem with that, though, is Russia is actually doing a damn good job of it, right? Compared to what the French Foreign Legion forces were doing, compared to what United States forces were doing, compared to what other European and NATO forces were doing in these countries. Russia is actually doing something with the terrorist group. But the problem is they're doing such a good job that the terrorists are now going into other countries, neighboring countries, including Nigeria, which is a problem because I'm Nigerian and we can't have more jihadists because we already have jihadists in our country alone. So they're doing that much of a good job that they're actually getting a lot of these people out of their country into other countries, and that's a big issue. So that's another problem when we look at Sudan, all right? Because Sudan, another issue is they're Islamic nation too as well. You can't call them an Islamic nation fully because they buy into a lot of secularism, but through and through, there's a lot of Islamic, heavy Islamic influence in Sudan, in the country itself, right? And what's end up going on is with this civil war, or we can call it civil war, but war between generals with egos. All right, what we have going on here is a potential for basically total chaos, total anarchy. Okay, because at some point someone may lose control, and when you have a country that's highly Islamic, all right, a lot of the men are your young population, and they could be militarized. What do you think is going to happen with a lot of these Islamic groups that are fleeing these other nations that are being impacted by Wagner? Well, they're going to come in and they're going to establish a foothold in a lot of these other countries if this potential conflict in Sudan isn't taken care of, right? So there's a lot of potential for error here. That's why a lot of people are watching this. But going back to my original point, the people, or at least the one country that's on it right now, is Russia. All right, they're funding the RSF with the Hamdan forces. All right, and they're also funding General Bhutan's forces too as well. So essentially, you can see Russia playing both sides of the game right now, because you can see there evidence out there of both generals who have had dealings with Moscow. And essentially what's going to end up happening is you're not going to see Russia take an overt stance and say, hey, I'm going to side with the RSF forces, or hey, I'm going to side with the Sudanese national military. They're gonna sit back and watch, because these two forces are pretty evenly matched, if you actually call it that. So they're gonna sit there, lie in wait to see who wins, and then whoever wins, Russia wins, and that's another country knocked down for the Russian government. And that's one thing that we actually have to pay attention to. It's not that I'm against Russia as a country or anything like that, or I'm not that I'm against China or anything like that, but you can see that both countries also participate in this neo-colonialism that all these other European countries have participated in. So don't get it twisted. Just because we see China coming in with a shit ton of money and saying, hey, let's fund your infrastructure projects and all this fancy stuff, right, doesn't mean they're actually helping these nations. Actually, a lot of times they know fully well that these leaders are corrupt and they're not going to spend the money properly, and they know that they're not going to keep up with the payments and the interest and what's going to go on. Now, generally, the interest rates that China offers for a lot of these infrastructure loans are generally a lot lower than what you'll get with the International Monetary Fund, but still the consequences are still there, right? And essentially, if we're not careful, because we let our leaders squander the money given, it just gives these guys the right to swoop on in and dominate the infrastructures that are there. China's doing that to multiple countries, and they're calling it their Belt and Road Initiative. All right, it's not an initiative; it's the New Age colonialism that's still being perpetuated. Instead of it being Russia, not Russia, America, and some of these European countries, it's actually China and Russia now that are picking up the new neocolonialist helm, and they're taking control of this whole situation. So there's a lot of things going on in the world right now, and they're all very connected. But this is one very important issue that we need to watch. Let's see if I can pull up a couple articles, or let's see if we can actually find a good video that's basically breaks this down a little better than I'm able to break it down for you. Just take my explanation as a layman's term, but let's see if we can find something else. What's good, Danny? Welcome to the stream. Natural resources, they got oil, pretty much the similar natural resources that a lot of African nations have. Oil, not a whole lot of grain or anything like that. I think oil is kind of their big export, and they also have a couple other things too as well. But oil is one of the big ones that's out there. Shane, what's good, brother? Finance man, what's going on? How you doing? He says a lot of people don't watch, or people don't want to watch serious stuff, huh? No, they don't like it, and I like it. I like the fact that not a lot of people like the serious stuff, because we can come in here and we can really break things down and talk about things the way we want to talk about this, right? So let me pull up this article over here. But yeah, it's absolutely factual. And here we got one by the BBC here. Get your head out of the gutters, people. And we're going to, there it is. So these are the two generals. We got Mohammed Hamdan on this side, and we got Fatah Burhan on this side. Okay, so Fatah Burhan is the national, the Sudanese military general. Okay, he's the guy that wants to take power and consolidate it under his rule. All right, because he doesn't have any plans of transitioning into a civilian government. And this is General Mohammed Hamdan. Okay, he is the general of essentially what is called the Sudanese Private Army, the RSF. The original goal, again, was to get his forces consolidated under the Sudanese National Forces under the previous president. But these two, they worked together to overthrow the previous president of Sudan, and now they're fighting for power. He's got his private army, he's got his national army, and they're going at it. Let's see if we can read some from this article over here. Let me zoom in so we can all see what's going on. All right, so life in Sudan, let me see, at the heart of Sudan. All right, life in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, and many other parts of the country have taken a sudden and very dramatic turn for the worse. At the heart of it, two generals, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the leader of Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, or Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, better known as Hemdi, the head of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The two worked together and carried out a coup together. Now their battle for supremacy is tearing Sudan apart. The relationship between the two goes back a long way. They both played key roles in counterinsurgency against Darfur rebel forces in the civil war in Sudan's western region that began back in 2003. General Burhan rose to control the Sudanese army in Darfur. Hemdi was the commander of the many Arab militias, collectively known as Janjaweed, which the government employed to brutally put down the largely non-Arab Darfur rebel groups. And then this is the link to the actual conflict that went on there. But I'm butchering these names. Majak Ajut was a deputy director of the National Intelligence and Security Service at the time, before becoming the deputy defense minister in South Sudan, where it seceded back in 2011. He met General Burhan and Hemdi in Darfur, and said they worked well together. But he told the BBC he saw little signs that either would rise to the top of the state. Hemdi was simply a militia leader, all right, playing a counterinsurgency role, helping the military, while General Burhan was the career soldier. Though with all the ambitions of the Sudanese Officer Corps, anything was possible. The military has been running Sudan for most of its post-independence history. The government tactics in Darfur, once described by Sudan's expert Alex Dewal, were as counterinsurgency on the cheap, used regular troops, ethnic militias, and air power to fight off the rebels with little to no regard for civilian casualties. And you find that in a lot of third world countries, they really don't care about civilian casualties or the civilian impact to it. It's more about just getting things done. So like I said, back in Nigeria, a lot of times when I hear about, when it comes to most African Americans and like dealing with people from other countries, right? They have these arguments of, oh, why did you flee the country you come from? Like, why don't you just go stay and fight? It's a little bit different, because the fight over there is different than the fight in some of these westernized countries, because these westernized countries, they almost have an image to uphold, right? They have an image to uphold, being the ones that are civil, democracy, all that fancy stuff, even though we know it's a lie, right? They still have that image. So if you want to go out there and protest, they will give you the illusion that your protesting means something, right? So they're not gonna have, forces come in and shoot you flat out. right? Just to get you out of the way. In fact, they'll come in and they do a little theater. Okay, they'll have the riot squad come in. They still stamp down the protest. Don't get it twisted. These guys are still doing the same job a lot of these third world countries would do, but they gotta make it clean. So they come out with the guns, with the rubber bullets, and they come out with the tasers. They come out with the tear gas, all that stuff to pretty much break away the protests and stamp out the potential would-be rebellion, because that's what a lot of protests are, and that's why governments are deathly afraid of a group of people getting together and protesting, because when they do that, essentially what happens is there's a potential for an insurrection, right? So when you see a protest, technically that's like a modern day mini rebellion, and that has to be stamped out. You gotta quell it out or whatever it is as best you can. So in Western world, it's a little cleaner. All right, you got the rubber bullets, you got the tear gas, and all that stuff. In non-westernized countries, they don't give a fuck. They don't care, okay? You are getting shot and moved out of the way, and that it's just is what it is. So protesting in those countries, it's a little bit different. These guys, when it comes to, they don't care about civilian lives and civilian casualties. In some of these Western nations, a lot of times their military is kind of graded on the amount of civilian casualties that were involved, right? That's why a lot of these Western countries go to great lengths to try to either fudge the numbers or flat out just hide a lot of their civilian casualty numbers, because they know that's a metric they're being judged on as a military group, right? But in all these non-westernized countries, they don't care about casualties. Hell, even Russia, like some of them, I mean, when it comes to, yes, to a certain degree, but they don't really care. All right, a lot of these countries, they don't give a flying fook what the civilian casualties are. They will turn their guns on their own people if it means getting them online. So when you're talking about changing the way the country is, right, from within, it's a little bit, you almost need a combination of both. You need the combination of military action and political action at the same time. How those two things are going to combine, I don't know, all right? But you could clearly see a lot of these countries are not doing it right, because you can't have a political takeover. A lot of times it just leads to more corruption. You can't have a military takeover, because it just leads to more corruption and death. So it's just it's a nice balance that you guys have to walk to make it happen, but it's tougher to do it in non-westernized countries than it is to do it in westernized countries. But let's get back to this article here. Let's say he says, Hemdi's power grew massively once he began supplying troops to fight for the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen. Pay attention to Yemen. Yemen is a very important place, all right? It's going to be a very important place coming up, especially if I think the U.S. is going to do what I think the U.S. is going to do with Saudi Arabia in the next coming years, all right? So Yemen is going to be very, very important. Sudan's then military ruler, Omar al-Bashir, came to rely on Hemdi and the RSF as the counterweight to the regular armed forces, in hope that it would be too difficult for any single armed group to depose him. And to be honest with you, he had the right idea. Because when you talk about non-westernized countries, a lot of them don't care too much about images. Like, again, I'm going to use my example, Nigeria, right? We've had multiple military coups and multiple military leadership. Matter of fact, it got so bad that when we finally got a civilian-led government, it was actually led by Buhari, who is a guy who was a formerly military governor. He was a military supreme commander, right? So he went from being the supreme commander, having a coup happen against him, to only later be elected as the civilian president of Nigeria. You see what I'm saying? And either way, the country was still fucked. So, again, right, the idea that you want to prevent a coup, because again, you can't run a country, you can't lead a country if you don't have control of the army, okay? I don't care. Y'all in the United States wondering why the U.S. spends so much on its military is because if you don't spend the money to keep your army happy, you can potentially face something like this, all right? So every leader of every nation knows whoever controls the army controls the nation, all right? So in order to mitigate one general getting too happy, all right, too power hungry, well, you got to figure out a way to impose a counterbalance. And the only country that's actually done this very, very well is Russia. All right, Russia has done this very, very well, because they have their own standing military, but they also have a bunch of other private organizations or even other public forces like Chechen forces. For those of you guys who don't know, the Chechen forces actually fight for the Russian government. A lot of times y'all don't know that, but they do. The Belarusian government, a lot of these Slavic governments or military forces are actually being used by Russia itself. So they use that as a counterweight to not only their own military to prevent their generals from getting too wild, right? But it also helps to make sure that they keep the balance of power firmly within their grips. So if the Russian national military wanted to get crazy and the general, I forgot what the general's name is, but if the general got too happy and wanted to take control, Russia can always rely on Prigozhin and the Wagner forces to be a good counterweight. And as we see what's going on in Ukraine right now, we know that the Wagner group is a problem. I mean, listen, a lot of people are saying that the gains that Russia has right now in the Donbass area, they believe that it's due to the Russian army. It's not. The Russian army is just there to back up Wagner. Wagner's the one that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of the heavy fighting in Ukraine right now. They're the ones who are going toe-to-toe with NATO weapons, with U.S. weapons, and they're winning. Yeah, they're having help from air support from the Russian government. They're having help with, armed transport and certain things like that. But still, it's their own private personnel that is doing the damage that is being done right now in Ukraine. They're the ones who are basically dominating all these other towns, and they're about to take Bakhmut. They're the ones, I would say, almost, I don't want to say single-handedly responsible for taking Bakhmut, but they're the main forces that got half of the city, and now they're the main reason why there's questions around should Ukraine retreat from Bakhmut, okay? So if we're looking at the private army that Russia has being Wagner as a counterbalance to the natural forces, or not the natural forces, the national forces of the Russian army, all right, that's a perfect counterweight. So if the Russian general, for some reason, decided to get happy and wanted to plot a coup along with all the other generals to overthrow Putin, he's got all these other forces. He even has the Chechen forces he could lean on to counteract the Russian military. So what this general here in Sudan is doing is actually pretty smart. What he's trying to do is he thought that the RSF led by Hamdan or Hamditi, all right, was going to be a perfect counterbalance to his national forces, right? Because then again, you can't trust the Sudanese national forces. They've been under a military rule for a very long time. So obviously, if they're under a rule where a general might have a lot of power and get some ideas, you need a perfect counterweight. What the president didn't, al-Bashir, what he didn't imagine was that his private army general and his national forces general were actually going to come and work together to take him out. That's what he didn't understand. He didn't realize that, wait a minute, the guys I'm building up right now to counteract the military are actually going to rise up, work together, and overthrow me. And that's what they ended up doing, and that's unfortunate. So word to the wise, if you're ever going to be a dictator someday in your country or wherever you're from, all right, you need to make sure you have absolute control of your military. And even if you don't have absolute control of your military and, you're worried about some of the other guys in the balance of power here, okay, you need to figure out how to develop your own forces to basically counteract that. In the United States, we actually do that. That's why we have multiple different agencies, and they now have their own paramilitary wing, right? We got the CIA. They're pretty much their own. They're pretty much their own thing. Like the CIA is their own. You could damn near call them their own nation at this point. All right. We got private forces. We got the army. We got the Marine Corps. We got all these different branches of government. All right. So there are a lot of different things that we have to be a perfect counterweight to whatever the hell, if any generals have any ideas. And on top of that, the U.S. also did a crazy thing where they made a bunch of 4-star generals. So they took away the 5-star general rank, right? Which is basically equivalent to like a field marshal or someone who's like basically the leader of the entire armed forces, okay? They took away that rank and they replaced it with a bunch of 4-star generals. That's why you'll never ever see a 5-star general since the days of like, Who? Could somebody in the chat give me the name of who was the first 5-star general, or at least the people who've held that title of a 5-star general? Because I think they stopped doing that after World War One or World War Two. World War Two. World War II was when they stopped doing that. But if you guys can give me the name, that's what it is. So they made it. They pretty much ensured that no one else can have that, pretty much that general rank. Right now, you could be the head of the army, you could be the head of the Marine Corps, the general of the Marine Corps, you could be the general of certain armed forces, but there's not one general that sits above the entire army like a lot of these other countries do, right? Like General Hamdan and I'm sorry, General Buhan, right? He's the general of the entire forces, the commander in chief of the entire armed forces. Okay, so the United States does a clever way of doing that by removing the 5-star title and then replacing it with basically a bunch of 4-star guys running around here. And plus, the United States military is filled with so much bureaucracy that they'd be lucky if they don't starve themselves out before they talk about a coup, overthrowing the president or whatever the hell it is. So going back to it, right, this is part of why you want, you know, if you're if you want to be a dictator of a third world country, you want a counterbalance to your national forces. Danny P. Patton, yes, General George S. Patton was a 5-star general. I think he was the last 5-star general that was in existence. Let's keep reading, and then I'll get to the chat questions, because Shane's got a pretty good question on what's going on here, and I wanna talk about that. And then we want to get to Hits Cat Holler. If you can hit that link I emailed you, and then we can kind of transition into Nigeria, because Shane's question is gonna help us transition into that topic. But here's the thing. What I also think as well is the Sudanese conflict is very, very similar to the previous conflict that happened, which was the Biafran War. Essentially, you had the same thing where you had two generals, one who, in this case, wasn't initially from the private military, but he was part of the Nigeria National Forces, but ended up splitting away once he started to see the BS that was happening, and he ended up leading his own nation against the Nigerian government, and it didn't end too well, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because these are the kind of thing that goes on in third world countries, and a lot of people don't really know. But yes, it's usually a fight for power. So I'm going to read a little bit more. We're going to go into the chat, then we're going to go into the conversation here. So he says, later that year, they signed an agreement with the protesters to form a civilian-led government overseen by a sovereign council, a joint civilian-military body. I already see a problem with this, because when you have a joint civilian military body, the military is usually taking control because they're the ones with guns. And that's how it always works, baby. If you got more guns than the other people, you can take their shit. That's how the world works, all right? With General Buhan at its head, that's already a big problem. So they wanted the original goal, guys. The original goal was to foment a civilian-led government, joint civilian-led government, led by a mixture of the civilian and military body, with General Burhan at the head. That doesn't make any sense, because General Burhan is the commander-in-chief of the Sudanese National Forces. So if he's the guy with the big guns, do you actually think the civilians are actually going to have any power or any control or any thoughts whatsoever or any input to what this general wants? No. What this general is actually doing is he wants to set up a situation where not only he's at the head, but he's in control to give the Sudanese population an illusion that they have a civilian-led government, a civilian-led rulership, instead of a military dictatorship, which is what Buhan wants, all right? And Hemditi, who was the leader of the RSF forces, he was supposed to be the deputy. Now, I already see problems with this, because realistically, General Buhan, being as an effective general as he is and an aspiring dictator, I can see him having plans in the cards to eventually take out Hemdi, who's their leader of the Sudanese National Forces. Or not National Forces, RSF, the paramilitary forces, I'm sorry. All right, so if they consolidated power under General Burhan, This guy can easily have him killed and assassinated, right? And now he becomes instantly the most powerful person in Sudan because now he has control of his forces and he also has control of the RSF forces as well. So there's a lot of things that you got to understand when it comes to this game, and that'll help you guys understand why there's not really a smooth, peaceful transition to power right now. Is because there is a lot of what do you call it? There's a lot of things at play here. So it said it lasted 2 years until October 2021 when the military struck, taking power from themselves with General Burhan again at the head of the state and Hemditi again as his deputy. Sig Tofa Kafi was a civilian member of the Sovereign Council and so regularly met with the two generals. He said he saw no sign of any disagreement until after the 2021 coup. All right, so after they got rid of the standing president, they were like, hey, all right, there's starting to be a problem because now you have a power vacuum. All right? You have a power vacuum and you got two powerful guys with guns. What do you think is going to happen? Of course they're going to turn the guns on each other because somebody's going to get ideas. All right? Yeah, it's all fine and dandy to say, all right, I'll make a pact with you, all right? You and me, as long as we overthrow that guy, well then, we can then transition into a peaceful rule and I'll agree to be a deputy, right? But essentially, once you cut the head off the snake and there's a power vacuum, people are going to have ideas. This is politics we're talking about here. This is Machiavellism at its finest, okay? You're going to see people play these games with power. Listen, a lot of people don't understand this, but when you get close to the throne of power, all right, when you get that influence where you can literally do anything, command anyone to do anything for you, get anything you want at a moment's notice, that is a hard thing to get rid of. Proximity to power is such an addictive thing, it's not even funny. Now imagine having that actual power yourself, right? You wield that power. You have a bunch of guys with guns willing to do whatever you want. That's intoxicating. A lot of you, when you look at egotistical men like this, right? When you look at these two egotistical men, you can already see the future. These guys aren't going to willingly just give up that kind of power just like that. You can easily see a future where these guys are going to battle it out because whoever wins become the supreme leader in charge. They have all the control. Not only that, they control literally the resources of the country. Now, whether they're going to do a great job of it, we don't know, right? And it usually never works under military rule. But that's basically what was going on. And he was saying it was becoming clear that the plan of General Burhan was to restore the old regime of Omar Bashir to power, right? Mr. Sadiq says that this is when Hemditi began to have doubts, as he felt like Bashir's cronies had never fully trusted him, and he should have known that already. Sudanese politics has always been dominated by an elite largely drawn from ethnic group based around Khartoum and the River Nile. Hemditi comes from Darfur, and the Sudanese elite often talk about him and his soldiers in the pejorative terms as country bumpkins, unfit to rule the state. Over the past 2 years or 3 years, he has tried to position himself as a national figure and even as a representative of the marginalized, and trying to forge alliances with rebel groups in Darfur and South Kordofan. I'm butchering these names right now. That he had previously been tasked with destroying. He also has spoken regularly of a need for democracy, despite his forces having brutally put down civilian protests in the past. Tensions between the two armies and between the army and the RSF has grown as a deadline for forming a civilian government approach, focused on the thorny issue of how the RSF could be reintegrated into the regular armed forces. And then the fighting began, pitting the RSF forces against the Sudanese armed forces. The Hemditi against General Burhan for control of the Sudanese state. In one way, at least, Hemditi has followed the footsteps of the SAF top brass, who he's now fighting over the last few years. He has built a vast business empire All right, this is how he's getting a lot of his funding from. He's getting it because he is a capitalist through and through. He owns a lot of the private sectors in Sudan, including the interest in gold mines and many other sectors. Okay, gold is another resources that you will see in Sudan. And here's a region of Sudan. All right, here's the Horn. Right, it's very near the Horn of Africa, which is like further east. But you can see these little straits right here, and you see Yemen. All right. Remember, I told you guys earlier, Yemen is a very important country right now, not because of its relation to Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia's new stance when it comes to China and Russia and the BRICS creation, along with India, right? But there's also a lot of natural resources here. There's a lot of national resources here and control of the ports here too as well. Whatever country dominates the ports here, they control what happens in the Red Sea, or at least have partial control to what happens in the Red Sea. So you can see why Russia is fighting so hard to keep that kind of influence strong. They're funding both sides of the war right now. Okay. General Buhan and Hemditi have both faced calls from civilian leaders and victims of the conflict in Darfur and elsewhere to face trial for their alleged abuses. The stakes are extremely high, and there are plenty of reasons for these former allies turned bitter enemies to not back down. And yes, and plenty of those reasons are because, there's a potential for not only the Hamdan to get killed, but, for a lot of bad things to go wrong. All right, because listen, they've already let it known. Okay, these guys are ethnically different from where this guy's from. All right, a lot of times in Sudan, what people don't realize is it's similar to what's happened in Nigeria, where ethnic tribes supersede secular rule. Okay, so these guys come from a particularly different tribe than where the private Mohammed forces came from. Okay, and these guys typically have been known to keep power within the rules. If we even look at it with Nigeria, a lot of power have been centered around northern rule. All right, a lot of northerners have had power, even if we've had elections where we've had President Goodluck Jonathan, who was someone who wasn't from the South, Obasanjo, who you can say is he's from the Southwest, but still, to the northerners, a Yoruba rule is better than the Igbo rule. Everything is better than a Igbo rule in that country because it's because of the ethnic differences there. Okay, those guys they've definitely been used to having power in the region, and there are a lot of people who dominate the military ranks, the top military ranks, and the top ranks of government are from the northern tribe. It's no different from here in Sudan. All right, a lot of this stuff happens in parts of Africa too as well, where certain tribes are favored in politics than other tribes. In this case, you had a guy who's from a tribe that isn't really people don't really have a whole lot of hopes for. All right, you see in the article they call them country bumpkins. That's what they think of people like him, darker, you can say darker skinned people like him, right? If you want to make it that way, right? They don't think people like that from his tribe or wherever it's from are fit to actually rule anything. So that's why this guy has a backing of a lot of the elites and a lot of the Sudanese governmental elements, because he's from that tribe. He's from those people. So now you got a guy with something to prove versus a guy who wants to take everything. It's going to be total freaking catastrophe. We can only pray for the people who are affected by it. How was the potential outcome? I don't think that there's going to be any legitimate resolution from this. I think this is going to escalate to the point where it might actually break Sudan itself. It might actually break the country itself, because neither one of these guys are going to give up, and the people who are going to be funding them have a stake in this too. Because remember, when you're in this geography over here, we're next to the Red Sea, next to the straits over here, there's a lot at stake, and you're going to fight essentially to the end. Matter of fact, there are other countries, European countries, we can even say, even even Russians and China, they would actually benefit more if Sudan was a broken country than if someone else was leading it. And that's just being real. A lot of these nations who are first world, or they're a lot more powerful, they benefit from a broken Sudan. So the outcome from the civil war, I see it going to the point where it breaks the country itself and allows for jihadist elements to pretty much sneak their way in. Because, again, they are right next to Saudi Arabia. And if you guys know Saudi Arabia, they are the main sponsors of terrorists. Okay? The attack on 9/11, that was them. I know people don't want to admit it because we're getting oil from them at dirt cheap prices right now, but somebody got to tell the truth. All right? Sudan, or not Sudan, Saudi Arabia is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism across the globe. All right, that's just who they are. Their brand of Islam is very, very crazy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be funding a lot of jihadist groups to go into Sudan and further wreck the country because they benefit. All right, so guys, we got to pay attention to this stuff. So Ola, I'm going to bring you up here in just a second. Let me go through some of this chat questions here real quick. Shout out to you guys for listening to this too as well. Shane says, the last 5-star general was Omar Bradley. Only 5 men have held the 5-star rank in United States, including Dwight D. Eisenhower. That's right. I knew there were only few people that ever held that 5-star rank. It means a lot to hold a 5-star rank because you're pretty much on par with the commander-in-chief. That's basically it. You're the leader of the entire armed forces. That means the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Army itself, all combined, including the Navy. You are supreme commander of it. That's a lot of freaking power, okay? Now, generally, United States is really good at, transferring the power to civilians and things like that, but having a 5-star general is a problem. Okay, now the new 5-star general is the commander-in-chief, okay, which is the president, and that's how it should be. So that's why they're supposed to be the overseer of all armed forces, no matter what. Yeah, that's what it is. What is this? Danny says, yeah, he said, I thought Patton was the last 5-star and got demoted due to his response to America's treatment towards the Nazis. Nope, Mandela effect is definitely in full play. EM, shout out to you. He says, good to see you talk about this. Yes, that's what we got to talk about this because it's very important. It's happening in Africa, and it's going to affect a lot of us who are from Africa. All right, Shane says, what are your thoughts on Tinubu or Tinubu? The guy's gonna die in office. That's my thoughts on him, man. He's too sick to be president, and the fact that he became president just proved how corrupt of a country we are and how much of an uphill battle we need to fight. All right, now some people are saying he's going to be good for Nigeria, and the thing is, you can't deny he does have a lot of connections, especially in Lagos. The problem is the corruption. He's a very, very corrupt individual. And if you look at his rhetoric, even for running for president, a lot of his rhetoric was, it's my turn. What does that mean? Like, it's your turn to be president. What are you going to do for the country, right? So I think he's definitely going to do a better job than Buhari, but I still think Nigeria is not going to dramatically be in a better off place. Matter of fact, even after Tinubu finishes out his term because he's sick. He's not a well individual. He's probably not going to make it in office, man. There are even videos of him. He can't even walk properly. He's falling over. He's got IVs in his arm and shit. He's a sick guy. I mean, he's too old to be doing this shit. But again, that's power. When you're around power, it's really hard to let that shit go sometimes. So I think that he's going to definitely do a better job than Buhari. But I think ultimately things are still going to be the same. We're still going to have issues with security. We're still going to have issues with infrastructure. We're still going to even have issue with our country's finances. There's still going to be a lot at stake because the corruption blob is just too much to even just take down with one presidency. And on top of that, what's going to end up happening after his rule is there's going to be a northerner that's going to take the place, right? Because they're going to, what they frame it as is they're going to say, oh, well, an Igbo man, we can't have another South person win. So let's say we have another Igbo guy running for president in the next election cycle, right? They're going to use that zoning argument against us, right? They're going to say, well, last president cycle were the Southern, it went to the South. Right? So they're going to label everybody now as part of the South. This next president cycle needs to go to the North, and it's going to go to the North. We'll be kidding ourselves if the next presidential cycle does not go to the North. It will go to the North, and we'll be right back where we started, all right? Because a lot of these guys, they want to Islamize Nigeria. A lot of these guys, they want Nigeria to become an Islamic state. And if you don't believe me, then ask me why we're also governed by Sharia law. It makes no sense for a country to have secular rule and Sharia rule at the same time and call it a modern state. It doesn't happen because you start to see weird shit like people still being stoned and burned for speaking out. They call it blasphemy, right? You speak out against a religion, particularly Islam, all of a sudden you're getting killed for it. and we're supposed to be secular. We're supposed to have a system that's supposed to be akin to the Western systems. How does that happen? It doesn't happen. We either have secular law or we have Sharia law that governs the country. Those two, they can't work together, and that's what we're seeing in Nigeria right now. We're seeing a lot more not secular, Sharia dominance in the country than anything else. That's why a lot of terrorists are allowed to basically roam free, take out airports. Look at the airport in Kanu. Is it Kanu? I think it was Kanu. I think it was Kanu, the airport in Kanu that was taken over by a bunch of Islamic militants. All right, our government pays these terrorists for kidnapping their own citizens instead of going and solving the root cause of why these terrorists in our country calling themselves Nigerian citizens are kidnapping elected officials. They're blowing up trains. You want to tell me that's not emboldening? They're taking over airports. You want to tell me that's not a problem? This happened under Buhari. Buhari is a northerner through and through. Matter of fact, people would even say he has Fulani origins. All right, and people don't know who the Fulanis are. The Fulanis are basically the Islamic group that also dominate the northern hemisphere of Nigeria. Okay, these guys are a little bit more extreme. And what's even crazy, a lot of these Fulanis, they're not even indigenous to Nigeria. I wouldn't even say their tribe spans all across sub-Saharan Africa. There are even Fulani elements and tribes in Sudan. There are Fulani elements of tribes in Libya. There are Fulani tribes or elements in all these Chad, Niger. There, you will see there's a whole band that spans across sub-Saharan Africa, and you will see Fulani, the groups all over, because they're just a nomadic group. They're a nomadic warrior type group that just goes through and does whatever the hell they want. And they're also occupy the northern part of Nigeria, because the northern part of Nigeria is part of that band of sub-Saharan Africa. It's part of that band that they occupy. So being the tribe that they are, they just take in and dominate, right? So he allowed Buhari for the terrorists to continue, right? He even people would even say that some of the Islamic leaders, the local clerics that were there, they also knew about some of these terrorist groups and some of the kidnappings that were going to happen. And some would even go as far as to say that some of these clerics split the profits with a lot of these kidnappers, while they used the rest to fund more weapons and more and recruit more people to only kidnap and pillage more Nigerian civilians. So it's becoming a big problem. Do I think that Tinubu is going to solve it? No, absolutely not. He's got that power to be the president and whatnot, but he's not going to be able to work against the cabal like he thinks he's going to work against the cabal. Nigeria right now needs something a little bit different than just someone like Tinubu, or even someone who's just running to be the secular president of Nigeria, right? We need a combination of a couple different things to get this country back on track, because a lot of these people who are currently dominating, they're leading us into a place of craziness. All right, so let me get Ola in here so we can have more of a conversation. Ola, shout out to you.
Yeah, what's up, Don?
What's good?
Duke,
What's
you
good?
okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm
What's
okay, man.
good? It's fine. This is the
Uh,
this is the live stream that needs to happen. So I'm gonna let you just go ahead and say
yeah,
what you need to say. Say your piece, and then like let people know your background. I'm not gonna spoil it for you. For those people who aren't from the Duke the Don channel, all right, they don't know who you are. Go ahead and let them know who you are, your experience, and what are your thoughts about the conflict in Sudan. But let's talk about Nigeria too. Go ahead.
okay. Before I start, I sent you a treasure trove of material in your email. You might want to go through that. And there's a playlist of video clips that I created, and I just wanted to ask your permission and know where to send you the link to give you permission to it, so you can see the clips I've put on there. There's quite a lot. My background, well, I was born in the UK during the Biafra War. Um, and my me and my family returned to Nigeria during Festac 1977. So I finished off primary school, went to secondary school in Nigeria, and I did a year of university. Had enough after 12 years, and I came back to the UK. And yeah, but what I noticed when I was in Nigeria, when I got back to the UK, apart from the fact that UK was a different country, what I noticed is a lot of the things that I knew that had happened in Nigeria, the Biafra War, Nigeria's history, thing, because when I was in Nigeria, um, we were hungry to know what was happening around the world. I remember when I was when I was at school, we used to we used to you know, want to read Time Magazine, Newsweek, Right On, Ebony, Jet. We wanted to know what's happening in the UK, in America, and Nigerian guy, teenagers. They were up to date with all the foreign news. They knew everything happening. So when I got to the UK and found out that these guys knew absolutely nothing about any African country, it was such a letdown. So, and I then noticed that a lot of the stories that I was hearing in the UK about things that had happened in Nigeria, it was either not complete or completely fabricated, one of the two. And because people here just take that, they take it for granted that the West has the best media in the world, they just assume it's true. And what I'm trying to do now is find a way to, even if it's to straighten some of the stories or at least pique people's interest, to let them know that, look, what a lot of the stuff you hear in the media in the West is not the whole story. For me, the best way for me to describe the media in the West is like an iceberg. You only see 1/10 of an iceberg. The rest is below sea level. So basically, you were talking about Tinubu. Tinubu was governor of Lagos State for 8 years. Um, okay, he did quite a lot. He did quite a lot in Lagos. Let's give credit where it's due. But what people don't talk about is the number of scandals that followed him after those 8 years. It was scandal after scandal after scandal. Um, there's a reason why he became governor. Let's be not. It wasn't because of his It wasn't because of his background. His mother was the head of the market woman, so that should tell you how powerful the mom was. I mean, if you had the market woman in somewhere like Lagos, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, your son might as well go in uncontested. Who's going to vote against them? So but after 8 years, there's been all these scandals. He's also been associated with people who have become president. Buhari tried for, I think Buhari had two attempts of becoming president where he was
Hmm.
unsuccessful. It was when he aligned himself with Tinubu that he finally got in. So
He's one.
Tinubu,
He's a kingmaker. That's the one thing you
he's
can't
seen
deny.
himself as a kingmaker, exactly.
He's a kingmaker. Yep.
But what we know in any successful empire, kingmakers never become kings. They remain kingmakers in the background because that's what they do best. But
So
this guy is
what do you
so
think is
power hungry.
that's what I was gonna say. Let me ask this question real quick.
Yeah,
What do you think is
yeah.
that so different, right? Because you're so right. People who are kingmakers, they usually operate in the shadows and they push out their agendas through the puppets who they call leaders, right? But you have one who's a verified kingmaker like Tinubu. What would possess someone
Mhm.
like that to just come out of the shadows? And what does that mean for the country of Nigeria?
It is pure and utter hubris. That's what it is. It's hubris. A, I don't think he's got the goods to be a president. B, he's too old. And C, because he's been chasing it for so long, what he should have done is he should have had uh, a protege. He should have had a protege and let that protege do what he needs to do, and he stay in the background still. But it's just pure hubris. Apart from that, because he's one of the what you call part of the establishment in Nigeria, he's one of those politicians who everyone knows. He's been there. He's tainted. Okay, he's not clean. Nigeria needs someone who is a relatively unknown force, which is why Peter Obi is absolutely perfect for the role. He's been a governor. He's had some pedigree. He's a businessman, self made man. This is the first politician that I've ever heard to declare publicly in Nigeria that he's not paying anyone any bribes for his campaign. Never
You're
happened
absolutely
before.
right. Do you want to let you know a fun fact about Peter Obi?
Yeah.
He's actually he was actually my dad's neighbor back in
Are
Nigeria.
you kidding?
His dad,
No
yeah, he actually
way.
showed up to my dad's funeral when he passed away. Yeah, we have pictures with him.
Really?
Yeah, Yeah, whatever.
Wow.
Yeah,
What?
it's
That's
that
a small
close.
world. It's a
It's a
small world.
very small
It's a
world.
small
He's
world.
a really good man.
It's
Like
a
if you want to
small
talk
world.
about purity, he got money. Like Peter, if he got money,
No,
he
no,
got
look,
money.
look,
But
look,
like he's a
uh,
good guy. He's a really good guy. Like we know
look,
him like
Duke.
personally. Like
Look,
it's like that.
one of my besties I've known one of my really closest friends. We call each other sibling. Yeah, I've known him since the 90s. He was my boss at work, but we're really really tight friends. He left Nigeria in 83. He's moved back to Nigeria for the last 10 years. When I spoke to him, he said, "Look, there's only one person for this role." He said it's Peter Obi. He said, that's all I can tell you. He said, I'm not even going to explain it to you. Just take it. That is the man he said he knows what he needs to do. He's the first politician who's come out publicly in Nigeria and said, I am not paying anyone for votes. That does not happen in Nigeria. No one is brave enough to say that in public in Nigeria, that they're not paid, that they're not going to bribe people for votes. He said it publicly. I'm not spending any money on vote. If you like me, you vote for me. If you don't like me, don't vote. That doesn't happen in Nigeria. This guy already has the three pillars that he wants to stand on. But this is the problem. Even if Obi won the presidency today, this is the problem in Nigeria, Duke. Nigeria has been in decline since, let me see. The first time Nigeria ever called austerity measures was in 1981. I was in Nigeria at the time. So Nigeria has been in decline for over 40 years. Okay?
Yep.
So a country that's been in decline for over 40 years. What do you expect Peter Obi to do in 4 years?
Nothing.
That's the problem. And the issue is, even if Obi wins, people are going to expect him to turn the country around in 6 months.
It's the same thing with Good
How's that
Luck
possible?
Jonathan. And you know, because Good Luck didn't even have a fair shake. He did it. He took it over after the his predecessor had his untimely situation. But even when he was president, there wasn't really even much he could do because he was also still restricted by power. You see what I'm saying? He was like there was little he could do. The cabal that's been in place for so long has been there that it's really tough to really move anything. Even look at the police forces, infiltrated and corrupted. You look at the military forces, infiltrated and corrupted. You look at Congress, you look at senators, you look at the judicial system, infiltration and corruption by the same exact cabal. So even if you are in there, there's really not much you can do unless, and here's where it's gonna sound very very radical, and no one else talks about this, but this is one thing I talk around within my circles, right? Whoever comes in needs to come with their own army. And it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, and not saying that come in and start a coup or anything like that, but they need that security. They need that backing, not just with their own army, but their own parallel. That with the like we're looking at this situation between in Sudan right now with the two generals, right? We got one private paramilitary general from the RSF forces, and you got the other guy who runs the Sudanese national military, right? So this RSF guy, why do you think it's really hard to shake him off, to get rid of him and even pull him back? Because he has the guns, kind of similar to what the Sudanese national government has. So imagine if that person who was gung ho of saying, hey, we need a fair civilian shakeup. We need to move things, and you can't bully us with the military. You can't bully us with the police forces anymore, because that's essentially what comes in and takes a lot of people out. Now we have an even standing. We need to come up with some kind of, because here's the I don't even go too far before I get labeled as a what do you call one of those people that starts revolutions and shit. But I'm just saying that if you're looking at, you need that strong solid backing, so if the political element doesn't work, the military element, at least they can't shake you off because they know that's there. But unfortunately, the military and the police forces are all dominated by the same people. Let's just be real. It's the same people, right? They're all from northern tribes, especially the upper military arms and the upper police force arms, right? They're all from the northern tribes. Now, these guys are all going to sit there and support what it is they want to sit there and support. And if we want to change something, we need to come in with some similar power structure to theirs. Peter Obi came in, and the reason why he got as far as he did is because he had a lot of political capital, right? He had former experience, and on top of that, he had the money to be able to stand on his own. But even if he became president, do you think he would have honestly had the support of the military?
I will go one step further to what you said. No, the pro
It's scary talking about this stuff,
God.
but like, especially
You
when I
see,
still travel. But it is what it is.
you see, Jesus. Where do you even begin? The private army is absolutely essential, but I will go one step further. If Peter Obi were to become president, he should spend the first 6 months building nothing but prisons because you need to throw that many in jail in Nigeria. Okay, there was in 1983 when the Second Republic came to an end. Okay, I was in Nigeria at the time. The coup happened on the 31st of December 1983. That's when the coup happened, and that's when Buhari became. Buhari did not lead the coup, right? He became president by default
He was
because
actually
they
there was a
couldn't.
coup on him when he was a military
No, no,
president.
that yeah, that's why there was a coup on him because he was such a well, he was in such a weak position. The guy who led the coup was a Yoruba guy.
Was it
They
Yaguan
didn't want him to
Yakubu
lead.
Gwan?
No, no, Idiagmo,
Idi Okay.
Idiagmo, right? So they didn't want him to lead. So that's how Buhari was like the compromise guy. Anyway, during this time, Nigeria has something called war against indiscipline. Within 6 months, Nigerians were queuing for buses. Nigerians were queuing at the post office. Nigerians were cleaning their environment. Nigerians were queuing at airports within 6 months. Why? This guy ruled with the stick. It was with the iron stick. On Saturday morning, if you were caught outside, they flogged you and they arrested you. The state governors. I was in Kwara State. The state governor would go to a ministry on a Monday morning and stand there at 7:30, and anyone who was late for the next hour, he would get their names and tell them to report to the emir's palace, the dirtiest place in the city, with their whole cutlass and bucket, and they will clean for 3 hours, and he will tell them, if you like, be late to work tomorrow. That's the kind of iron hand that Nigeria needs. Prisons.
Yeah.
So a lot of people once you lock a lot of people up in Nigeria, Nigerians are very emotional people. Once they see that you're locking people up for 6 months, those who can afford it will run away. Those who can't will stay, and they will get with the program.
And I think
And
part
you
of
can
what
only
also
do you can only do that with a private army. You can't do that
yeah,
with the regular army. You can only
you
do that with a
need
private army.
we need like the next person that comes in and they really need change. They need to come in with the guns. They have to. You almost have
Yeah.
to. You need to present a counterbalance. And then once they do get into office, I think there should be not in addition to prisons, there should also be institutions that they should be funneling a lot of these young individuals into, right? To basically say, all right, this is education. This is the right type of education you should have. Not of this nonsense that we're seeing right now. And what it's gonna do, and even some of the boys, we can even get them to some kind of like a kind of setup that sets them up to have that responsibility and discipline. Whether it could be a military like school, but for the boys, or even a military school itself, right? But it needs to be
That
some kind of academy to start at least getting the youth acclimated to the new idea of we need secular rule. This idea of this corrupt, crony type of government that we have been used to seeing, it's not actually supposed to be the way. And we need to start. I think whoever comes in not only needs to come with that army and come with the prisons to lock up the corrupted, but we also need to come up with institutions to help educate the future on the right type of thinking, so we don't fall into this trap again.
Duke, they have this already now. There is something called the Nigeria Military School
I
where they
was I was
train
there.
cadets.
I went to Air Force
There you
Primary.
go. There you
Had
go.
my uniform
The,
and
the,
everything.
you have Nigeria Military School, and you would expect that those who graduate from a military school would go straight to the Nigeria Defense Academy. No, they are on the same footing as external candidates. If they don't get letters from people already in the army, they don't get in. So you get people finishing Nigeria military school who end up not being soldiers. Why would you why would you go to Nigeria military school and not end up being a soldier when you spend your life the first part and the first part of your life doing that? And all of this is down to nepotism. If you don't know someone who's already in the army who gives you a letter to go to the Nigeria Defense Academy, you don't get in. But a lot of this rot setting with Babangida, okay?
Yeah.
Babangida, against all advice, took Nigeria into the Organization for Islamic Conference in 1989. He was not supposed to do it. It was against all advice. And that is where that was the root of the current Boko Haram problem you see today. That's where it
Yeah,
stemmed from.
yeah. Yeah, that's gotta go. All of that's gotta go. And realistically, you're right. And those people, those, and you think about how many soldiers right now are not only disgruntled, but they're disillusioned now because some of them are fighting in the Nigerian military, but they're not getting the right pay, they're not getting the right support, they're not really getting any type of thing whatsoever. So realistically, I don't even say recruitment or anything like that. I'm just saying that there's a huge pool, a huge market realistically for an alternative to a lot of this stuff, right? Where if you can set up a proper alternate, kind of like this again. I keep comparing it to the Hamda guy from the Sudanese, we call it the Rapid Response Force, right? The private military group, right? Because they originally, the president initially started his group or funded his group, I'm sorry, to counteract the national government military because he knew that if the general gets too much power and gets ideas, he can be easily overthrown. So that's why he set up a parallel military that was private to be able to counteract that. But what he didn't realize is both of these guys were going to get power hungry and come after him. And now that he's gone, they're fighting each other. The thing is, if we come out with our own infrastructure, whether it's private, and we have our own funding, which is through capitalism when owning certain sectors out there. And don't you can't tell me there aren't rich Igbo Nigerians or Yoruba Nigerians down there. It's just that these oligarchs, it's kind of weird. They kind of want to stay in their own spots. But if we're able to pull all that together, those resources to really provide a solid alternative, right? One that actually is nationalistic, and that's the key point, right? Nationalistic. We need nationalism. A lot of people in the West will say nationalism is bad, but nationally Nigeria is what we need because it gets rid of the tribal warfare, it gets rid of religious warfare, and we focus on Nigeria itself, right? And I think nationalism is something we can foster amongst the youth Nigerians versus a lot of these older Nigerians now who are gotten so used to the tribal shenanigans that's been going on for so long, right? And even with the End SARS movement, I don't know if I know you're familiar with that. If you want to speak on it, I think that was a clear opportunity, a clear window where I saw that there was actually a bunch of young guys in Nigeria, kind of like me, who don't care about if you're Yoruba, you don't care if you're Hausa, you don't care if you're Fulani or Igbo. They just want Nigeria. They just want to be able to live their lives in a normal way and stop with all this corrupt bullshit. They want opportunities. And then once I realized that, then I realized that I believe the hope truly lies with the young, but we need to provide a lane for them to grow.
Duke, this NSARS, if I take it back a bit, once again, this is another one of the things that Babangida did. When Babangida was in power, up at that point in Nigeria, not future Niger, well, not military leaders, but let's say future Nigerian politicians and civil servants came from universities. And because of that, the student union politics in universities in Nigeria was extremely strong. It was very, very strong. So student unions used to basically be a counterbalance to government policy. They used to question government policy. Babangida saw that as a threat. Do you know what he did over 5 years? Replace the entire student union network with cults. So Nigeria doesn't have a student union network anymore. They have cults. And what started to happen, because before then, people from, say, Anambra State would gladly go to study in Sokoto State or Lagos State. There was no issue of, well, you're Igbo, you're coming to study in the house. No, 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 no. We were all students and you were bound by the student union. The minute the student union disappeared, all of a sudden, you who are Igbo, you don't feel safe going to study outside of the Igbo because you don't know what's going to happen with cult guys. If they decide to start rioting on the campus, you don't know who they're going to target.
It's
And
usually
this is
Igbo.
where
Let's just be real. Igbos are the easiest target. I mean, if we look at all of Nigeria right now, we are the easy target for a lot of Nigerians to pick on. Yoruba speak on us sometimes, and and I won't say Hausas, but the Northerners they definitely pick on Igbos, right? I mean, it's just the main thing. It's easier to burn down an Igbo man's village than face the truth or even hold their own people accountable for this mess.
but when you start undermining your student politics in a country, you're on the way to ruin. basically. And that
Yep.
this is what happened with Nigeria. There's no student politics in Nigeria anymore. And that's why you see people wanting to leave because even when they finish university, there is no forum for them to go and voice any kind of opinion. They're busy either trying to survive or trying to leave the country, or if they even speak too loud within their small capacity, you get these cult members now. They've all got guns. You know what happens after that? Either that
Yeah.
or you disappear. So it's
If
been
I
so
if
much that's happened.
if I was president of Nigeria, the first thing I would do is legalize guns for the citizens. Like that's the first thing I would do because we have such an adversity to guns. But like I think that it'll prevent once a lot of these. Because here's the thing: when you have a lot of these cultists or terrorists that come down and they attack these villages and they kill a lot of these civilians and all these different things like that, a lot of times it's because they know that the civilians are unarmed and they know that they know they're going to be
Exactly.
defenseless. But if they're walking in and the house has a AK-47 and just about every household, mom, dad, and whatnot, and they're mandated to use it, then chances are those bullies aren't going to come in and just pick on them because now every time they're going to go in, they're going to expect a firefight at least, and that's going to thin out their herd, which is going to hurt when it comes to recruiting. And a lot of these people that they're recruiting, they're usually children with low economic opportunities or outputs that they hey, give me 500 naira and I'll go murder an entire family for you, right? So a lot of these kids, they don't even have the stomach for a real firefight, right? So it's one of those things that will start to really decrease the frequency of attacks that you see going on. But I think the reason why is they know that the civilian population is unarmed. So a lot of these terrorists, they just go in and kill willy-nilly. That would be the first thing I'd do.
You see, unfortunately, Duke, and I say this with a very heavy heart, but I've said this for 30 years, and I still say it with a heavy heart. Nigeria's problem is got so ingrained that it will require a lot of bloodshed to correct things, unfortunately.
Listen, you and me on the same page. A lot. Listen, I talk to my moms about this. I talk to my family members about this. They call me crazy, right? And it does sound crazy because you're practically advocating for violence, but it's not like it's a necessary violence because you know how entrenched a lot of this nonsense is. That's what I was saying. You need your own army to come in here to move the old cabal off of its square. And I think the first thing your army needs to do is win the trust of the civilian population. Once the army garners the trust of not only the civilian population, but you also know that they're also paramilitary. What do you call it? Militias like that are existing. Like the
Yeah.
Delta has their own militia. Even Eboland, we have our own militia. There are militias all over the place, right? You also need to gain the trust of those militias as well in order to get the majority on your side. So then people can clearly know it's your movement versus the corrupt state actors. And that's the thing. It's gonna result in a lot of bloodshed because people in power don't want to give up the power that they have. And a lot of people don't even have the stones to understand what it really takes to take what's really rightfully Nigeria's and give it back to Nigeria. Not these corrupt politicians that had their reign on power for years. And we look at the effects of it. It's deteriorating the country. So I think getting the youth on our side, getting an army, getting institutions to re-educate a lot of these people away from the decades of rot that our country has put them through. I think that's when we finally would actually stand a chance in changing something. But that's why when I look at Peter Obi's campaign, I had hopes that he was going to win, but I also knew that this bullshit was going to happen, like with the corruption and the ballots and all that stuff like that, right? Realistically, if I was Peter and I was in the running for a lot of stuff, I would probably have private boys wandering around here doing some crazy things. I won't lie. I would have
No,
boys going around doing some wild shit too,
nah.
right?
What I wish he would have done, and I wish he will still do it. I think he should team up with Omayele Shure, the guy who owns Sahara Reporters.
Yes, yeah,
I
yeah.
was rooting for him in the last election, but I knew it wasn't going to happen. But I was root. Do you know why? The mere fact of the ideas
Didn't he
that he
get
was
arrested
expressing.
too? He got arrested back in the
Listen,
day when he had his own
this
thing.
guy Omayele explained what happened. One of the because he was part of the student union network as well before he went to America. He said there was a time they got arrested when he was in the student union network, and they locked him up. He said, and in the evening they decided to let them out for exercise. He said it was quite late. They decided to let them out to stretch their legs. And he said they were not aware that they could hear what the policemen were saying. So some policemen came and they told the DPO, the district police, whatever, the boss, that there were some armed robbers operating in the area. He said, don't worry, we know who they are. They're part of our gang. He said he was shocked to hear that the police knew all about. And then he said, now I understand why in Nigeria, if the police want to arrest the biggest criminal, they will do so without there being any noise whatsoever because they know who they are, they know where they are, they know their movements.
Even a
They're in it
terrorist,
together.
they know it's
Exactly.
no different from a
They're
terrorist. That's what I've been saying
exactly.
earlier. You can't come in and change a government that actually seeks terrorist people on to kill their own people, right? Acute knowledge. I know I know I get what you're talking about. I know you don't agree with war against your own countrymen, but Nigeria is doing that right now against its own people. They're using terrorist organizations to strike fear in the hearts of other Nigerians to keep control of power. So if we can't keep fighting. If we want shit to change, we can't fight this obvious threat with kumbayas and praises. At some
That
point,
doesn't
we
work.
got it. It doesn't work, and this is why, like, even coming to America, when you're looking at the civil rights movement and you're comparing it to MLK and Malcolm X, I would see Peter Obi as like an MLK, a very peaceful,
Absolutely.
once every he's a
Yeah.
Martin Luther King through and through, right? But we need a Malcolm now. We can't.
That's
MLK doesn't
Omoyele.
work. MLK
That is
will get you.
Showore.
Suare would be the guy, right? Because Peter Obi was an MLK, but the peaceful movement he won, but at the end of the day he didn't win because the cabal, the corruption, it all end up taking over, right? You need someone who's a Malcolm X, right? Like Suare. If he comes in and says, no, we're gonna be loud and we're gonna go after every single one of you guys. Matter of fact, I won't be surprised if he'd be one of those guys to start those prisons and then arrest a lot of these top politicians and call it corruption. And he wouldn't be wrong. And a lot of Nigerians will fall behind it because a lot of Nigerians know deep down the system is inherently corrupt. Now, some of them might be pissed off because their guys getting arrested, and that's the people that support because Nigerians can get like tribalistic that way. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we know that we have a corrupt country. And when you start seeing a lot of these top officials get thrown in jail, you'll start to see a lot of people slowly come around. And the people who have opposition, meaning the opposition with guns, you have your own paramilitary group to counteract all that. You have your own, militia group who are operating within certain communities to counteract certain things. We need a Malcolm, someone who's not afraid to lead a group of men with guns to make change. That's what we need. We can't keep fighting war with kisses and hugs and all this stuff. It's not working. It hasn't worked for the past 60 years. We know it does work, military action, because it's worked for them. And a lot of them have held power for this long. So I see where you're coming from. It's hard, but I think it's time, especially when it comes to Nigeria, adult decisions have to be made, no matter how tough they may seem.
Let me ask you a question, Duke, or let me put a scenario before you. And I've said this for the last 3 years. Imagine a situation where next month Nigeria said that they're going to do what Ghana did and invite the diaspora back home, but Nigeria actually was serious about it, and they went on a project of building low-cost houses so that those coming have government houses at low cost, and that there were temporary jobs, even if it was 6-month contract jobs for those. So not, I'm not talking about full-time contract. So you come, you got a low-cost housing, even if it's a 2-bedroom apartment or 1-bedroom apartment, you got low-cost housing, right? Whereby you're paying reasonable rent, and you've got a 6-month contract to start, which could be extended to God knows how long, the minute you find your feet as to what you can do. Do you know how many Nigerians already established in the diaspora will be rushing to the airport to get on a plane to go back to Nigeria?
Yes.
America will be begging them not to leave America. I'm telling you.
Come back, please. It's like no, they're actually offering us stuff now. We can go back and actually make our country better. Let's do it, right? A lot of people would, and you're absolutely right. Even just I would even say I would even go as far as to recruiting Black Americans to come to Nigeria too as well, because a lot of them they have the knowledge of not only the way things work in America, and that and here's the thing, they have the knowledge of how business is supposed to work, not the grease your palm and you expect a little bit more than what you're supposed to get, right? In America, you do business, right? So you start bringing some of that culture in. It's going to accomplish a lot of different things. First of all, you're going to have a lot of foreign people coming in, and they're going to be bringing their money, they're going to be bringing their infrastructure, and they're going to be bringing their way. That's going to increase economic activity for the local populace that are there. And on top of that, it'd be with proper protections, it'd be pretty difficult for the Nigerian government to start either trying to extort the Americans or things like that, especially because they'll know they'll make a big stink about it, and then now you have the ears and the eyes of the American government that's looking in and saying, "Hey, what are you killing our people or are you kidnapping them? Like what's going on here?" Nah, you can't have that, and that's another thing that we can use as a deterrence. So I think that there's a lot of different things, but you're absolutely right. It stops the brain drain of the country when we realize that we actually have true free economic opportunities to pursue what we want to do, right? But unfortunately, it's not the case. People are either fleeing, and the only people who are staying are the people who are dumb or want to hang on to power. That's it. It's sad. I'm not saying that all of them who are back there are dumb, but like the people who want to be there because they thrive off of the chaos that's happening right now, they're stupid.
But look at it. If you were to let's say, for example, you embarked on this scheme and say, okay, we want people in the diaspora to come back home, Black Americans, anyone basically who has an interest in Nigeria getting back on its feet. So let's say in the first year, let's say let's be very conservative. Let's say you expect about 50,000 people to turn up. That means you have to build 50,000 houses all over the country because you're going to spread them all over the country. Look at how much employment that provides for people.
Boom.
Look at the economy you create from that, from
Already.
the building alone. Look at the local economy you create from that. Then you have to get these people ready for jobs. You have to order equipment and supply. So that's another set of jobs you're creating for people because you have to get logistics, all sorts of stuff. These people finally arrive. There are people who have to pick them up and ferry them around. That's another set of jobs you're creating for people. But why is it that Nigeria cannot sit down and flipping get its act together and do something, just one decent thing in its lifetime? Is this beyond the wit of man? Really?
It's not. It's just that a lot of these guys they got so used to power, and they don't want to let that go, and that's the big problem. And the thing is, they're not gonna let it go. That's why they have to be moved out of power. I'm firmly of the belief, and a lot of people don't agree with me because they want to go to the Peter Obi route, but I'm like, we need something tougher than Peter. I'm sorry, he's great. He did what he had to do, but at the end result, you see what people with power and the ability to flex it, what they're able to accomplish. Even if you win, you still don't win. You see what I'm saying? So we need to kick those guys out because at the end of the day, it's not gonna happen. They're not gonna do it because as far as as they know, it's their turn, and the people who are their friends, the people who are their family members, they get the benefits of this country, right? Think about it. We have a president, all right, or a former sitting president, I'm sure Tinubu does the same thing too, that flies out to a completely different country, a westernized country like Europe, to get proper health care versus fixing their own country up to get healthcare in their own country. You don't see the president of the United States flying to France to get their healthcare done. They have the healthcare system here. Although it's expensive, it's still the best healthcare system in the world. Why go anywhere else when you can just be here? So you have to say, if anything, these leaders in Nigeria who are taking the resources from Nigerians and not helping the people, but then when they need help, go to other European countries, it should be considered treason for them to even consider going to another country to go get healthcare treatment when they have their own country they could be supporting there at home. That's a problem. A lot of these guys have been allowed to sit there and rape and pillage the infrastructure of Nigeria for so goddamn long. Nigerians have been so used to the brainwashing, they don't even question most of it anymore, right? It's just another walk in the park. It should be a big problem. My dad died of a minor stroke in a Nigerian hospital, and part of the reason why he died because we wasted so much time over just figuring out who to pay. The nurse wants money, the doctor wants money, then the assistant wants money. Everybody's wanting money, and before you know it, he's dead. He died like a
Duke,
dog in his own country. Are we gonna sit there and allow that while the president can get sick, fly his ass out to a westernized country, and be fine? That's a problem. Nigerians should start looking like that, especially with the youth. We need to start turning around and looking at these sham or charlatans that we call leaders and start saying enough is enough. If you don't take the money you're stealing from the average Nigerians and put it towards the infrastructure, put it towards the healthcare, put it towards the roads, and put it towards a perfect, not only the perfect, a military and police force that resembles a fair westernized world, then you should be locked up in one of those jails and accused of treason, because that's exactly what you're committing. You're stealing from your own country and leaving nothing behind for its people. And that's bullshit. I'm sorry, I had to go off, but it's what I see all the time, and no one calls it out.
my mom died of a stroke 3 years ago. Same thing. She was being helped into a car. She collapsed and she never woke up. When Buhari was going for president, I remember his campaign. Buhari actually said in his campaign, why does he need to go for treatment abroad when we have some of the most qualified doctors in the world in Nigeria? When he became president, though, I remember in 2018, Buhari was in the UK for 2 months. No, that's not all. Duke, that's not all. No, that's not all. The presidential jet was parked at the airport for every day of those 2 months at 4 figures in dollars a day. And I said, hang on, why couldn't they fly it back to Nigeria? And when he was ready to go back, pick him up.
More highway robbery. More robbery, and it's just the theft of a nation, and that's what we're dealing with. A lot of us, they're stealing.
What needs to go on the statute books in Nigeria? What needs to go on the statute books in Nigeria is, after whoever settled, that as from today, if it is proven that you have stolen even 10 naira, firing squad, and make examples of people.
It sounds harsh, but like Nigerians are built different than Westerners, man. Because it's not like if you don't understand. If y'all think that's harsh, it's not, because there's nothing that gets through the sense of a lot of Nigerians, unfortunately, than violence, because that's a lot of what people are used to nowadays. It's like that force, right? We've had multiple coups, and there's been bloodshed even with every single presidential cycle that's been going on, even the most recent one. So it's the one thing that we understand is violence. So you see a lot of these guys who are saying, hey, listen, you're stealing from your country, you're stealing from your own countrymen, this is treason, and you're an elected official, you're giving it to your own family, death penalty, you're gone, get out of here. It's that serious, because what it does is it's going to ingrain in a lot of the minds of the future leaders that if they even think so much as stealing from their fellow countrymen, it's you face the highest consequence known to man, which is your life. That's it. It's gone. That's capital punishment. You're gone. And that's going to stick into the minds of a lot of people. So the future leaders, they're not going to be wanting to take that step and saying, hey, I don't want to do any of that, right? You need some now. Maybe over time you can loosen up the laws or everything like that. But for right now, the way we are, it needs to be strict. It needs to be swift. And it needs to be public. A lot of people need to see that public justice. If anything, you know how we line up criminals after they get caught, right? We line them up. They sit there and they just interview them. They're just sitting there interviewing them right there in front of everybody. Like, tell us your crime. Why did you do this? Right?
Listen,
That's the same thing. We need to make it public. That's what needs to happen.
In the 80s, Nigeria became the major transit for drug trafficking. Nigeria was a major transit port for drug trafficking, to the extent that Nigeria's reputation abroad in the 1980s with drugs was trashed completely. And Idiagbon, the guy who said, I said, led the coup, he said it publicly. He said, from today, anyone who gets caught in the Nigerian airport with drugs is gonna get shot publicly. People thought he was joking until he did the first 3. What do you think happened after that?
People stopped.
Exactly.
That's what we listen to.
I'm saying this because I'm Nigerian. I understand Nigerian mentality. I live there. That's the language we understand.
A lot of westernized
In
people are gonna say,
Nigeria,
"Oh my God, you're being unnecessary cruel." Nah, not like.
no,
Listen,
no, no, no.
Nigerians. One thing we understand very well is violence, and that's a. Yeah. You keep going, man. Keep going. A lot of people are not gonna
No,
get
no,
it.
no.
They're not gonna get it.
Listen, in Nigeria, if you want people to do something, you get a policeman to stand there with a koboko, horsewhip. When he give you two lashes, when you go there the next day, you remember you got the lashes yesterday, you'll do exactly what he asked you to do. That's how Nigeria works.
Yep.
This kumbaya stuff, this is where the kumbaya got us, where we are now. That's where kumbaya got us. It
And that's
don't
what I
work.
like about the general. I forgot his name again. That led the Biafran War because he didn't lay down. He didn't just sit there and say,
Ojuku,
"Okay, let's play Ojuku." That's what it
Ojuku,
is.
Ojuku was my
Ojuku.
personal hero.
Yes, he
Ojuku was my
said,
personal hero.
"Hell no! I'm gonna take the military that I have, and I'm gonna go to war with the Nigerian government over the freedom of my people." And unfortunately, it didn't happen. But the fact that he was willing to fight instead of lay down and hold hands, I think that was the last time. And unfortunately, that was the last time anything major, like maybe SARS, but like that wasn't even close. But like it was the last time where we actually had a major conflict, a major pushback between two generals to fight for something that really mattered. And ever since then, things have just been kind of died down. And you can't blame a lot of Igbo Nigerians either, right? Because we got over 2 million people died in that conflict. Over hundreds of thousands of Igbo were starved to death. It was a bloody, brutal war, and it's something that sticks in the
Listen,
memories of a lot of people. My father fought in that war, right? So it was very, very brutal. And I think a lot of Nigerians they took the wrong lessons out of that law, which is to just lay down and not do a whole lot of things. But I think we need to revive that old fire that we had, and really need to combat a lot of these things. Otherwise, we're heading towards being a failed state in the near future. I see that happening.
at the peak of the pogrom before the war broke out, this is something a lot of people don't know. Because the Igbos were fleeing the north after the Nzegu coup.
Yep.
Obviously, they were fleeing the north. At the peak of the pogroms, it was estimated that there were 30,000 Igbo people being killed every week.
Yeah. They were not
30,000
playing.
every week, and this went on for months. They would stop a bus and tell everyone to get off, and they would tell them to say certain words, which Igbo people with their accent do pronounce differently. You pronounce those words differently, they just pull you aside and shoot you there and then. And Ojuku kept on warning the government for years, and no one listened to him. I love that man. Do you know that he sanctioned the Nzegu coup?
Mm.
Ojuku sanctioned the Nzegu. Ojuku said it was him and there was one other guy. He said we were the most senior officers at that time who knew about that coup. He said I sanctioned that coup because the whole aim of that coup was to get Awolowo out of prison and make him the head of state of Nigeria. That was the whole aim of the coup. Unfortunately, it went pear shaped, and events took over. But if you look at Ojuku's vision for Nigeria, it's a shame that they didn't make use of that man's brain before he died.
And that's the thing. And right
It's a,
now we
it's a,
have
it's a shame.
we have a situation where we have this crazy fascist authoritarian regime that's taken over, and partially because we also have Sharia law in government too as well. If we're going to be secular, we need to remove religion out of government. We can't have women still being stoned and burned because they speak out against Allah. That is crazy happening in the 21st century. We
Dude,
can't have that happening. We need to privatize a lot of things too, like get infrastructures away from the hands of the public. And I'm talking about roads. I'm talking about, listen, because right now, a lot of these infrastructures we have are supposed to be under like public or federal control, but like a lot of, it's given no room for private elements to come in and really make things flourish. I'm sure there are plenty of rich people in Nigeria right now that would love to help build roads. I'm sure there are plenty of rich people in Nigeria right now that want to help build or contribute to the infrastructure, even if they get a cut of the pie. Why don't we let them do that? It's because if they're not paying the Pod Piper, or if they're not part of a certain elite group, well then you get denied. You can't build roads unless you're part of the people we want you to build roads, and then we eat from it. You see what I'm saying? So we're stifling growth. We're removing private element from competing, and it's just, and on top of that, we have this overbearing governmental weight that's bearing down on a lot of these other people. It's not looking good for the future. I'm telling you that right now.
When I was in Nigeria, I lived in Ilorin. Ilorin is in the middle belt, and Ilorin is one of the powder kegs of religious clashes because the center of Ilorin, the old town, is predominantly Muslim, and they have a Fulani emir because the Fulanis conquered Ilorin many years ago. But the
Yeah.
surrounding areas is Christian. So it's about 55-45 Muslim Christian. Okay, so when there's religious clashes in Nigeria, Ilorin is one of the first places to go up because it's always it's a powder keg. You know, the slightest spark and everything just goes. When I was living there, I grew up. I spent over 10 years there. Duke, Muslims do not know where the Sharia court is in Ilorin. They don't use Sharia court. If you give a Muslim the choice between normal court and Sharia court, they will choose a normal court because the Sharia laws are too harsh.
Really?
Yes, if they have the choice, they will use
Oh,
the other
okay. Because
courts
I was,
because they
you
because
would
the
think they'd
Sharia
speak out.
because they've had this imposed on them. Up north, up north, the emirs and the emirs, they have absolute power. So whichever way the emir goes, everyone goes. If emir says Sharia, all the malams,
Yeah, Malams.
the guys.
Yeah,
But see, the
yeah.
problem with Nigeria is the Nigerian constitution did not take into account to make the emirs and the imams and the religious people stakeholders in the Nigerian government. This is the problem because these are the people who are in touch at grassroots level and control
That's
people at
true.
grassroots level.
And some of those
If they're not
imams,
state, if
they know these
thank you.
terrorist groups. They're aware of these terrorist groups. Some of them are actually working together. So, like, yeah,
Now
you're absolutely right.
imagine if the imam has something to lose with government. Do you think he'll not tell the people to keep to put their guns away? If he
That's
knows
right.
that his gari is going to go, if he knows that if you start fighting, you are going to put sand in his gari, is he not going to tell you to put his guns away? You
That's
put your
true.
guns away. It's all about power and influence. But because these imams and emirs, they don't feel like they're stakeholders. They will do anything to disrupt government because it gives them the kind of power that they want. This is the Muslims up
That's
north.
probably why they're
They don't
using
want
these.
Sharia law.
That's probably why they're using a lot of these terrorists, and I didn't know that. So realistically, it should. So then, why isn't it so easy to organize then, right? Because yeah, you even because I didn't know. I thought the Muslims up north. I was under the impression that a lot of them are actually supporting these crazy far right, or I don't know what you want to call it,
No,
but these crazy
they
laws.
support.
But I didn't know they were also against it. Because if they're against it, it should be
No,
that much easier to organize, shouldn't it?
Duke. They don't support the laws. They support the imams.
Oh,
If
okay,
imams tell
okay,
them that we're doing
okay.
Sharia, they will blindly follow the imam. It's
That's
only those
true.
who
That's
go to
true.
Sharia court it's only those who now, it's not everyone who supports Sharia who actually has to go to Sharia courts. It's those who go to Sharia court who now say, Duke, ah, is this what Imam said I should do? I can't do this Sharia court, though. They are going to chop off my hand if I steal something. But
Yeah,
he didn't
yeah, that's
know
true.
that until he went to court. He didn't know that till he went to court. He was shouting Sharia, 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 Sharia. But it was the day he went to court, he realized what he was shouting for because the Imam told him.
So a lot of these
You see how it
imams,
works now?
I mean, there's got to be a way to depower them or something. I mean, that's
And
crazy
and
that
no,
they have
and
this much influence.
the, the imams report to the emirs. That's up north. And that's why south of Nigeria is a different kettle of fish. Because there's no Oba who will now come out and say, I'm going to lead people blindly. People say, no, 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 Oba, you cannot lead us into fire. We like you, but we have to have some say in what you want. If you're going to kill it, no, people will stand up and say, look, not that they don't disrespect you. They don't want to disrespect you, but you
Yeah.
have to have something concrete to put before people. But up north, it's different. Anywhere the imam and the emir say they're going, they just follow.
Yeah, that's gotta
That's the
change.
problem.
We gotta, yeah, that's
Exactly.
gotta
Why
change.
do you think why do you think this guy Sanusi had such a hard time when he was emir of Kano? They eventually booted him out because he wanted to reform. He wanted to reform stuff. He said this is archaic, and I said, you know what? If it's archaic in that case, we think you'll want to change too much here. All right, bye bye. Don't let the door slam you on the way out.
Yeah, that's typically how it happens. That's typically how
So
they'll boot you out. Yeah, and that's the thing. We're gonna keep speaking out against this because I think there needs to be some serious reforms, especially as Nigerians. And here's the thing: I feel as though that it's not just the threats that we're facing at home, but it's a threats that we're facing overseas too as well. And the big threat is a lot of young Nigerians that I'm seeing right now. They're beginning to forget Nigeria itself, right? This brain drain that we're seeing happening, it's gonna be permanent. It really is. If Nigeria continues to be a screw up, and we don't actually have a way to reach back out to the people who are gone, and at least get them involved in the process somehow, even getting the national system where Nigerians abroad can vote, right? At least feel like they can participate, even though there's still gonna be corruption. At least there's something tying us back. There's really nothing. It's almost like the Nigerians who fled Nigeria are like kind of forgotten at this point. All right, you come back if you want to come back. Stay over there if you want to stay over there. That's the general attitude we're getting from Nigeria. So a lot of these immigrants that immigrated to America or immigrated to the UK or other parts of the world, right? They're essentially they're building lives. Their families are building that. Some of these young Nigerians, Nigerian American that I see here now, they don't like Nigeria. What? Nah, we over here, and it's
but
crazy and it's sad to see too as well
but
because a lot of these guys going home and understanding where their home is from, that's likely not gonna be a thing. And those guys are gonna end up having kids, and those kids, and eventually they're gonna be just generations that are lost. Like, it's wild to me.
because of the generation of kids, you bring something up, and I'm very glad you did. Look, I think that what we're doing right now, I'm not joking. I don't think it's a coincidence. Okay, I need you to get in touch with Mr. Obi if you can. You and I are going to speak. Obviously, we're going to speak offline about certain issues. But there are certain ideas that I think people close to him need to at least need to open his eyes to the possibility of. This thing that I told you, what is stopping a lot of Nigerians going back to Nigeria today to even start businesses is mainly accommodation. They probably got nowhere to live and security. If you take those two things off, forget medical, accommodation, security, and something to start with. So many people want to go back to Nigeria. So
Yeah.
many. But it's very expensive to rent, especially if they know you're coming from abroad. They're gonna charge you what they call gringo rates. You know this as well as I do.
Yeah, it's crazy. They will take you for everything, bruh. It's not even funny. You almost have to go in with someone who's an attaché, who's part of like who can talk for you, right? You just don't say anything. And
Exactly.
definitely don't dress like you're an American, please. If you're a
Exactly.
foreigner to go, do not dress like you from America. As a matter of fact, you want to dress down, right? Give people no assumptions
Exactly.
of you got money because you will pay a different rate. Not even at the apartment, at the market, no matter where you go. If they're gonna say you got money, they will. You get the Okada. Okada comes to pick you up. Eh? They look at you, America. No, so it's this one. You got to pay this one now. They will get you, man. So you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. Do not act like an American. Do not even act. Just dress down and
Listen,
just be like the rest of them, please.
the
Otherwise, you're gonna have a tough
the
time.
la the la the last time but one that I was in Nigeria, I was traveling from Abuja back to Ilorin by car. I flew to Abuja, but I traveled back by car, and I hired a small, just a small four-seater car, and as we were traveling along the Abuja Lokoja Road, the guy said, he said, Oga, I like you, but you must do one thing for me. I said, what? He said, when the police stop us, Oga, don't talk. Oh. If you talk, they gonna say you come from abroad. They'll charge me double. Don't talk.
Yeah,
Don't say any. And it's
yeah,
true. It's true.
he's right. He's absolutely right. You don't say anything, or they will charge you an arm and leg. It's corruption now and then. And the thing is, how do you stop something like that, right? Corruption starts from the top down. If the leadership is corrupt, then it just filters all the way down to the bottom. So again, you almost have to decapitate the leadership and put something in that is like realistically can institute some level of order, right? Because then when you see that level of order come all the way down, it's gonna be hard. That's when you start to see business run the way business is supposed to run, right? It doesn't matter if you're from America, UK, or wherever it is. Right? They don't even do this to the Chinese because the Chinese will out. They will out.
I see.
They will out
During
negotiate anybody, bro. Them Chinese is
this
no
is
joke.
this is during the during the Diagbon Buhari regime, Diagbon say was ruling. My brother used to work. My brother's a journalist, and he was there once when the state governor went to what they call the Housing Development Corporation. They were supposed to be in charge of building low cost houses,
Mm,
and the governor took a look at the books himself. Do you know what he said, Duke?
what?
I'm shutting this place with immediate effect.
Damn.
He
You
called the
follow?
general. He called the general manager. He said, "Give me a pen. I'm signing the papers for this place to be shut now." The general manager said, I'm sorry, I don't have a pen on me." He said, "You're a disgrace to yourself. An entire general manager. You don't have a pen on you." Called his secretary, signed the papers. He disbanded the place on the spot. These people had embezzled tens of millions of dollars. Tens of The highest
Wow.
corruption in Nigeria you will see is at state and local level. It's not federal level. It's state and because there's no oversight.
Yeah, and that's another thing.
Why
We
do you th-
need.
why do you think why do you think I say that if you build low cost housing and invite people to go back to Nigeria, listen, there won't be enough planes in the first week.
A lot of people go back because a lot of them they would still have
Absolutely.
connections to the United States, and the dollar goes far in
Absolutely.
Nigeria, so they can make really a good name for themselves. I got a question from EM here. He says, "Hey, quick question: How did Nigeria become a Muslim nation? I know how Christianity came to Nigeria, but yeah, it became Muslim because." Actually, do you want to answer this? I'll let you go because you got a lot
Yes, I
more.
will.
Go ahead.
Nigeria is not a Muslim country officially. The problem is Nigeria in 1989. Nigeria joined the Organization of Islamic Conference, which in quote made it a nation that recognized Islam as a major religion. Nigeria is not a Muslim country; it's a secular country. But you
Yep,
wouldn't
and
know by the
we've
news
been
that goes on.
suffering. Yeah, we've been suffering from it ever since that big ass freaking mistake. How do you think we start to reverse that on our way back to secularism? How do you think we start to, I wouldn't say depower a lot of these Islamic leaders that are now taking control over their regions, but how do we start breaking that up and then returning a
Right.
lot of people
It
back to nationalism?
right.
Because we need
This,
nationalism. We need a strong
this,
national
this, thi-
identity.
right. This might sound radical, Duke, but
Oh, I'm
see,
as radical as they come. I just don't let people know that.
right. Right, right. This conversation is a start because many years ago, no one would have expected a Yoruba and an Igbo person to start talking about building Nigeria. So that's a start.
That's
Where
true.
it goes is the likes of me and you who live abroad getting in touch with the likes of Shure and Pitobi to sit down and tell them they know, but to basically open their eyes to certain things that they might not even be considering. Because what, like you said, where Nigeria should be going first and foremost before anything is nationalism. That's the first thing on Nigeria's agenda. It's the very first thing, nationalism. The minute we start seeing ourselves as Nigerians and not Igbos and Yorubas and Hausas or whatever, that's the first step. Don't get me wrong, it's an uphill task. This is deeply rooted stuff.
Yeah.
This is very deeply rooted
You, you
because
got to
everything
break
in
that
Nigeria is
tribal
along religion or yeah,
tribal lines. You got to break that tribal
yeah,
and religious that barrier, because I think and nationalism is the easiest way to do it. I think the best way to
yeah,
start is with the youth, because the older guys, they're gonna have to realistically, we just
yeah,
have to have a strong, like I said, that SARS movement where we had the protesting and we had a lot of young people who were out in the streets and they were dying. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong, they were getting shot left and right, but they were still out there protesting, end this movement of these corrupt anti-gang task force that you guys have out here that are just willy-nilly. And then it starts to evolve into like the injustice that a lot of youth, the lack of economic opportunity that a lot of citizens were facing. So the protest evolved to something else, and you saw a huge wave. Igbo, Yoruba, Northerner, it didn't matter. They came together and said, stop stealing from us and give us jobs,
exactly,
give us opportunities. But
exactly,
what happened? The
exactly.
movement got broken apart, and it didn't really go anywhere. It just dispersed into something else, right? So I think what ends up needing to happen, we need another movement like that, but we need someone who can lead that movement not only into something else, but to able to channel a lot of that energy into national pride. That's what it is. Say, hey, enough of this. It almost has to be like an us versus them type of mentality, right? Where it's like enough of this. This person's a northerner, or how when it comes to election, they always do this zoning thing. Oh, well, this person from the south has gone become president. Now it's time for the north. That's done.
Yeah,
No more of that. It doesn't matter.
exactly,
It's the most
exactly.
qualified. No more North, no more South. It doesn't matter where the fuck you're from. All right. If you're qualified to be president, you run for president. All right. None of these corruptions, none of these multi-million dollar ballot buy-ins that they have all these other candidates do for these
Hmm.
parties. None of that shit. You have your own campaign, similar to what they do here, right? And then you go out and you make it happen, right? Enough of that stuff. And that leader needs to keep that national identity. Their platform has to be nationalistic. It sounds crazy, but you have to run on a complete national platform, get a lot of these youth on your side, and then not only that, get a lot of these. If you can't get your own paramilitary, because you're gonna need it in Nigeria. If you don't think these guys, the Tinubu
Absolutely.
boys, or your opposition are gonna send killers to come hunt you down, you got another thing coming. They will kill you. Like matter of
Exactly.
fact,
Yeah.
like listen, y'all don't get it. Like Nigeria is completely different, right? It's not. It's not like you need your own army. Like you need your own army to stop shit over there. Even because if you start shit and you don't have any backing or serious backing, they'll take you out. It's nothing for them to do that. They'll send their boys, they'll come kidnap you, or they'll come do something with you. Or hell, they'll get the police officers to come do it, and they'll beat you up and do
Yep.
whatever you want. You need your own. You can't trust the police forces. You can't trust the military forces, and that's the problem. There is no trust in these institutions anymore. All
Exactly.
right, so you almost need to
Yep.
bring your own infrastructure if you're looking to be the new future leader of Nigeria, and you need a lot of powerful people to get that situation started. But I'm gonna give you the last word. We're going on 2 hours now, and I'll let you go in and
Yeah.
give your last thoughts on this. First of all, thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, I'll let you close out.
Don, I'd like to do this again if it's okay with you. But apart from that, could you please let me know how I can get in touch? If you want me to get in touch with you apart from your email, that would be good because there's a lot more I'd like to talk to you about. It's been really, really nice talking to you.
Absolutely.
Believe you me. Look, you might think you might be thanking me for coming on, but you're doing me a huge favor by letting me be here and talk about this. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, we can even talk offline because we like so we have an Igbo union here, but me and a couple other people we're actually splitting off, and we're not completely leaving the original union. It's a bunch of adults, and you know how a lot of Igbo adults are. You get into a room, you can't even get something done. Everybody's screaming. It's like hold on, So it's a little hard to get
Count
things
me in.
across, but like we're having our
Count me
own
in.
like yeah, I got you, but like yeah, we're splitting off, and a part of the goal, at least I want for our version. We call it the youth leadership now. But part of the goal I want for this is to be able to start getting a lot of these young Nigerians to start not only coming together resources wise, but coming up with a lot of ideas on how we can start
Yeah,
generating some kind of change back there. Whether it's going
yeah,
in and pulling people together and start building like infrastructures down there. It is really not that expensive, especially with American money
Don't-
going far. And if we got people pulling stuff together, we can easily build buildings. We can build stuff to even be
yeah,
sustainable, and then locally start doing like outreaches and stuff like that. One of the major center point that we're talking about right now is power. energy, right? Reliable energy. That's a problem in Nigeria. We can build all the buildings we want, but can we have reliable energy? And that right now is a big problem. So we have buildings that have reliable power and it doesn't go out like that, and you can't blame Napa for it. Well, now we have infrastructures that are reliable that at least people can slowly start building trust in before we can start funding outreaches, right? And there are different things that there are multiple ideas that we can do, but I think that we need the help of Nigerians abroad, and we also need the connections of Nigerians who are not tainted overseas to be able to make this happen. I already have like a lot of people that I'm talking to. I mean, I could say like a handful of people that I can trust. Even some of them are Northerners themselves. All right, but they definitely want to see some change, and they're pretty good at it, and I trust them. So it's some of those that we need that cohesion, right? And the one thing that me and this guy were talking about is a coalition that needs to be built, especially once we start getting our eyes into politics, right? A coalition needs to be built of Southeasterners, Igbos, Yorubas, and Northerners. That it sounds crazy, right? But that coalition needs to be built and set, because that's where we can start actually putting out a lot of those nationalistic ideas. We can say, hey, look, we're a party of just Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Northerners. It doesn't matter where you are. We are Nigerians, and we need to get you to stop thinking of us as just tribalistic. And then it'll be very, very easy to start fostering that us versus them mentality, especially if we spent a lot of time on the ground helping out a lot of the local populace at least get into a slightly better position. That's all we need. That's all we need. We need help abroad to go ahead and help people back home. And I think if we get a lot of Nigerians to stop forgetting that they have a home back there, I think it'd be better. But yeah, we'll definitely talk more offline.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of stuff moving on the back end. It's just that's why I don't be barely having time for
yeah.
shit, bro. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, my time is just
Yeah, this is one thing I told my cousins when we had a big meeting. I was telling him on the phone. I said, "Look, it's not about people abroad sending you money." I said, "Let's sit down and come up with ideas. Come up with ideas for jobs. Come up with an idea for a project. And within that group, we say, okay, this is a project. How can we fund it? It's not just about giving money." I said, "It's the
yeah.
money is it's come up with ideas, sustainable ideas, network between each other."
That's why we need people that, and that's the thing. Actually, realistically, I don't even know. Starting next year, this year for sure, because I'm going back this year. But next year, I'm going back every single year because I need to be the one down there, at least managing and overseeing a lot of the base. Because okay, we trust people, but we don't trust people at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense, right? You get what I'm talking about, right? So
Listen,
I'm gonna be down there a whole lot, overseeing a lot of the ground based infrastructure. So I don't even know if I'd have enough time to even be doing it, even on my other YouTube channel, be even doing it like that, like I'm used to, because this is actually what I'm actually passionate about. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. But yeah, I'm gonna be, because we need someone from here who understands it. So like people here that we're working with can connect and trust and understand that shit's getting done when it needs to get done. I can't just send thousands of dollars to Nigeria and then just hope for the best, right? And we need to have a plan, and there's somebody who needs to understand the plan to be able to execute it. And that's basically what I'm going to be doing every single year. Every I go down there, it's going to be right up until the next election cycle. We're going to be keeping.
it's like
There's going to be a lot of things happening.
yeah, for years I've been passionate about this, having building up, and talking to you about this. It's like having you inserting a pressure release valve.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult for a lot of people to have these guys. Because even when I talked about this stuff with my mom too, she would say, "Hey, be careful, because they can kill you if you keep talking like this." Like, so everybody is scared. Violence isn't great in our psyche. It is what it is, right? But we need people who are unapologetic, unafraid, and even not even really worried about taking it that far. We need people who are able to not only stand on their own integrity, but be passionate about what they're doing to see it through. And that kind of answers your question, because qualifications, obviously you need to be educated, and then you need to be outside of the system. That should be a qualification in my book. You can't be part of the
Yep.
Nigerian system and run for office.
Yep.
It's not going to work, because you're going to, especially one of these parties, you're going to be part of the cabal. You need to come from almost like someone like if Trump and Obama had a baby, we need that guy. Someone from outside the system, quote unquote, but with
Yeah.
enough macho charisma and the literally the boot and the knuckles to back a lot of things that they're saying. Trump can do that. That's why Korea wasn't messing with Trump when
Yeah.
he got in office. They weren't doing that. I'm a nuke you. They only started doing that with Obama and Biden, right? A lot of countries
Yeah.
respected Trump, no matter even though Americans thought he was stupid and an idiot. A lot of people
Yeah.
they respected him because the rest of the world love strong men. Okay,
Yeah.
it sounds
True.
crazy, but
Yeah.
strong
Yeah.
men
Yeah.
are what you see. A lot of stuff you see with the westernized world democracy, that's actually a rare thing. The real thing that goes on around
Yeah.
the world are people who are strong men. There's strong men all over the place, and by strong men, guys like Trump, right? Guys who are like one of these people you would almost say is like a Putin or like one of these dictatorial kind of mentality. We need those kind of people. Now, obviously, don't be a dictator or whatever it is, but you need to be a strong man. Well, we need a strong man. Those are the only way you can handle a country like Nigeria. You can't be this soft,
Absolutely.
pussyfooting type of person that wants to sing kumbaya all the goddamn time. You got to be strong-headed and have a plan, smart, right, and be able to have the willpower to execute. But go ahead if you want to answer this
Absolutely.
question
I
for
agree.
EM here. But like, I kind of went in, but like, that's my thoughts. We need a strong man.
What qualification would you want for your leader, and what steps would you want in place to stop the new leader from becoming a dictator? Um, what qualification I want from Nigeria? I think Duke has just answered that question. Someone who is not, someone who hasn't been tainted. That is qualification number one. Not part of the cabal. Someone completely new, but who has also lived and worked abroad and understand how things work in the international community and can relate to international leaders and can relate to international education, but can also relate to Nigeria as it used to be and where he wants
Yes.
to take it back. That's the reason I mentioned Shuure. He ticks all of those boxes. And not becoming a dictator. Unfortunately, in the interim, you cannot rule Nigeria without becoming some sort of dictator. It's
You have
almost
to.
impossible.
You can't
Sorry,
you
but
can't
that's just how
avoid
it
it.
is.
Like literally, the next person that comes into power, they need to almost institute a situation that extends their power in order to make change because you're not going to
Yeah.
make enough change in 4 years or 5 years. It's not going to happen. You need to be
No.
able to lock it down and that's what I'm saying. It's going to be tough. You need someone with that like that undying focus, and they have to be fair. That's why they can't be corrupted or they can't be come from within the system and be tainted because we already know where that mindset's gonna go. But someone who can come in and not only with charisma but with style, pretty much lock down the seat of power for a while until they start to get things under control. Meaning, once you lock things down, you got to be expecting to do some pretty radical things. That means you're probably
Mhm.
going to be locking up a lot of political
That's why I said
idiots
build a
out
lot of
there.
prisons.
You're
I
gonna
said
have to
that's why I
take
said
a
build
lot
a
of
lot
those
of
guys
prisons.
out. Like I'm talking about, like there needs to be a mass investigation, like financial investigation into the current leadership or even past leadership. And once you do that investigation, you'll start to find out how much money. And when we start letting Nigerians know how much was stolen from them by these politicians, they'll be all for it. Once you start letting them know, hey, this is Buhari, and this is how much he took from you. This is this person. This is that person. This is how much they've been stealing. This is how much they've been. These are all people who have been stealing and being corrupted for the longest time. It's time to go, and the Nigerians will be behind it because they feel the pain right now, currently. So we need to once you lock things down. First of all, you might not even have to lock things down on purpose. They'll actually force you to do that because once you start announcing that you can start locking up corrupt politicians, you'll see some crazy things. You'll start to see some crazy shit happen.
Yep.
People start trying to kill you. They will
Absolutely.
try to because they know that you're talking about them. So
Absolutely.
they need to keep their position. So once
Absolutely.
you start to see the killings and violence go crazy, then you lock down the country, institute martial law. And once you take care of the corrupt politicians, it's now time to deal with the terrorists. A lot of these terrorists that these same politicians were telling you, oh, it's so hard to deal with these people. It's hard. We need Wagner Group to come in and help us. It's so hard. No. We locked down the country. We don't need Wagner. Wagner, you can go. Bye bye. We're fine.
Yep.
Actually,
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep.
We actually don't need
Yep.
Wagner because Wagner's funding. Russia's
Yep.
funding a lot of fucked up shit right now too. But we can
Yep.
lock this shit down and we can take care of it. We just need to get the political head, the corrupt political head, decapitated. Once you decapitate them, you take away this terrorist. I will go as hard on these terrorists like Reagan did on the war on drugs. That's how hard I'm
Yep.
going in on these people, right?
Yep.
It's damn near a war
Absolutely.
this time. Now we're not paying you after
Absolutely.
kidnapping Nigerian citizens. We're gonna find where you are because we're gonna get the infrastructure elements to find you. I mean, we're partners with the U.S. too as well. We got drone
Yep.
capabilities. We can get all of that. We can find you, and we'll smoke you out of the little hut you're camping out in there, and you're coming back, and you're gonna face time in prison or you're dead. And once you start ensuring the safety of Nigerians, then you can start unlocking things, and then, hey, I'm done. I've done my job. Let me get out of office and go from there, right? But you need to institute a structure and a template for the future leaders to follow once you get into office. That's the qualifications we're looking for.
Do you remember a guy called J.J. Rawlings?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Do you know the first thing he did when he took over power the second time?
Was it? I think
He
it was
took
martial law or something like that. Something equivalent
no.
or
He
no?
took the previous three heads of states and killed them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
That's the first thing he did. And Rawlings, he would go to the farm and dig ditches with people. That's how popular he was.
Yeah.
But he in order to do that, he sacrificed the relationship with his own children. He wouldn't even hug his own children. He said because he didn't want them to get used to loving him in case he died.
Oh,
And he
that's
regrets it,
tough.
but that was a sacrifice that he made for his country. So when you say, yeah, of course, how passionate are you about Nigeria? That's the question I would ask.
Yeah.
How passionate are you? Things like this, they never came easy. If they did, everyone would be doing it.
That's true. It takes
So
a certain kind of crazy person that's crazy enough to keep their sanity when they're doing stuff like this. And those people, those are true statesmen, right? Those guys, they're it's almost like this world has gotten rid of like true statements, like the Winston Churchills and the Pattons of the world, right? I mean, Patton was a general, but still, you can consider him a statesman. People would even consider someone like Churchill a general too as well. But those were guys who weren't necessarily in or part of the cabal, but because they had so much national support and national power, and along with the support of the military, but they weren't even fully part of the government like that. That's what we need. Someone who's willing to speak out, someone who's willing to make decisions on behalf of their country and be unapologetic about it, right? Even if it means going after people you used to consider colleagues, people you used to consider friends. They got to go, unfortunately. And
it's
it's sad,
business.
but like we need, yeah. And the thing is, tough solutions need tough scenarios need tough solutions. That's what we need. We need a tough guy to come in who's not corrupt, who's outside the system, that is strong enough to not only control his own private army, but can you wield that to go ahead and make a change. And that's what Nigeria needs. I mean, look at a lot of these countries. We're talking about Sudan right now, right? Why is Sudan having a problem? Because you have the private army trying to fight the public army for control and power, right? There was supposed to be this peaceful resolution towards power, but one of them got wise ideas and wanted to be a dictator. That guy's not good, right? So the other guy's fighting. I don't even know neither of them are good. But you understand that in these third world countries or countries we consider third world, you understand how a lot of people who are rise to that high of power, they don't care about their civilians. They don't care about the population. They care about keeping more power. If that means killing and subjugating the people, they'll do it. And it's going to happen and keep happening until someone who has the same mentality as them but doesn't want to take it as far as to ruling people, right? And they want to be able to push the agenda to the point where it gets far enough that it can continue on its own. And eventually that's what needs to happen. And we're not seeing that because everyone has either lost hope or lost the passion or they didn't even know the right path to get there, right? And we need to start showing people that there's a lot of hope out there. That's pretty much all I got to say. But shout out to you. He says, I wish you all the best of luck. If we're going to need all the luck we can. Definitely. He says, I like seeing how passionate both of you are about your country. Your pendants and Nigeria is very lucky. No, I mean, I hope so, but like we gotta do our parents. He said, yeah. I mean, we gotta do our best to change it, right? I'm doing my best to change it from where I'm at right now, and even to the point now we're getting to where I can now start traveling frequently to go and start making sure that those changes are happening in those countries on my watch. So but we're only one person. Right, we're only one people. I can do my job, they can do their job, but we need a lot more. We need a collective to be aware of what's going on, and also to drop in and say, how can I help? What can I do? Right, and we need Nigerians who are either second generation, first generation. We need them to be as passionate as we are, right? Because we could be that hand to really change our country back there. Really. because there's no one else going to do it from within. It's impossible to do it from within. It's got to be from outside, and we, as the immigrants from outside, have a responsibility to change it. I believe so, because we can walk both worlds.
Absolutely. I think it's down to us because there's a analogy I told my brother once. I said the problem sometimes is when you're in Nigeria, you're too close to the problem. It's like I said, there's a reason they call it point blank range. It's point blank range because you can't see the point anymore. It's blurred. You need to take a few steps back, focus, and see what the problem is. You know, sometimes in engineering, when you're too close to a problem, you
You
can't
got to
see
take
what
a
the
step
problem is
back.
anymore. You need to
You
take a
got
step back.
like
And
literally
yeah,
once you're able to see the full picture, it's like, oh, okay. That's the piece that was fucking this whole thing up because now you start to see how everything connects. But if you're too close to the scenario, sometimes you can only see what's in front of you. And like we're too literal. Sometimes we just look at a problem, we're seeing it for what it is, but we need outside perspective or need to see the bigger picture to see the full scale of the situation. That's the only way it needs to change. And we being on the outside, we can see the full scale for what it is. No one else is I mean, some people in Nigeria are talking about this, but no one else is talking about this slow Islamization of the whole country. No one else is talking about that. No one else. People don't think, oh, come on, no. It's true. That's what's happening right now. And if you don't call it out,
uh,
you're too close to the problem. Go ahead.
one thing I'll tell you before we go. I'm going to take you back to where Nigeria's problem with inflation started. You might not know this, but your mom might know about this. I'm going to mention a name. She ask her. She will probably explain to you. Um, do you remember one of Nigeria's head of state called Gowon?
Yeah,
Yakubu
Yakubu.
Gowon.
Yakubu, go on. Yep.
Yakubu Gowon. He was a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. Really nice guy. Guy never owned anything. Didn't have a house. Anything.
He didn't.
Unf-
He wasn't as corrupt either. I didn't think he
no,
stole.
no, no.
People said he didn't
He
steal
was
as much.
overthrown. No, when he was overthrown in 1975,
He was on a
he didn't
flight or
have a
something.
house. He was in a OAU conference in Uganda
Yeah, and
when Muritala
they
took
just
over.
they took
Yeah,
over the country while he was overseas. That's crazy,
but
by the way.
unfortunately, because he went to Sandhurst, he became a stooge of the Brits. Unfortunately, and this is what one of the things before I said is what I was going to say when you're talking about Sudan. Don't forget that with everything we said about Sudan today, the West are sitting there quietly watching what's happening. There's people dying right now. No one has actually gone in to intervene to stop the dying. Everyone's just watching to see what's going to happen. And this is what happened with Nigeria. This is what I'm going to tell you. In 1971, under Gowon's regime, 1971-72, when we joined OPEC and the oil money started flowing, Britain being a colonial master, Gowon went to the UK and literally said, Nigeria has too much. We have so much money to spend. We don't know what to do with it. Can you advise us what to do with this money?
Dummy,
Do you know what this? I'm not joking. Do you know what the suggestion was?
give it to us.
No, 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 no. That would have been too good. The suggestion was to ruin Nigeria's economy from within. Do you know what they suggested they do?
What?
We know what you can do if you got that much money. Why don't you review the civil service salary structure? So Nigeria has three levels of salary: local, state, federal, and a university staff. Four levels. So what they did is they said, right, we're going to review everyone's salary. Don, you've been earning $50,000 a year. We don't think that is commensurate to Nigeria's status with all this money. So your salary is now going to be $75,000 a year, a 25% increase. Not only that, we're going to backdate it 5 years.
That sounds great.
So the salary increments, we're talking about from janitors up to chief executives, they all got salary reviews. They all got backdated based on their status. What do you think happened with inflation in the next 5 years?
You can't keep paying for all that stuff. How you gonna pay for it? How you gonna afford it? You gotta print money.
And then Nigeria paid for Festac, Festival of Arts and Culture. I can't tell you how many billions of dollars they spent, but the real damage was done with what you call, ask your mom what the Udoji Awards in 1973. People built houses out of a windfall that they never worked for, and that's where it started. But as you well know, with this kind of thing, it's a slow burn. They plant the seed today, you don't see it till 20 years down the line. And even then, 20 years later, it's an economist who's going to point you back to where you went wrong because you can't see it. But this is the path that the Brits led us down.
And right now, it's so bad that like $1 is equivalent to like 400 or 500 naira now. It's probably higher than that now, which is
Do you know
crazy.
when I got to Nigeria in 1977, it was 80 kobo to the pound.
Now it's
Okay, in
insane.
1985, when I finished school, when I wrote my school exams, it was 3 naira to the dollar. And then
Jeez.
they went for an IMF loan, and a part of the conditionalities was to devalue the currency.
And these
And
these
within,
IMFs, man, you got to be careful
yeah,
with their loans. They are not good people.
this was under Babangida. And so, I think in 1985, it was something like 5 naira to the pound. And when I left Nigeria 4 years later, it was 26 naira to the pound. By 1991, it was about 100 naira to the pound. And even we thought 100 naira to the pound, my God, Nigeria's finished. Little did we know that 30 years later, we're going to be talking about 1,000 naira to the pound.
Yeah, yeah, it's bad. It's bad. I mean, this is, but here's the thing, right? While the U.S. dollar is strong for the next decade, right? Because I don't know, the U.S. dollar is kind of scaring me. I feel like it's gonna definitely, with bricks and everything, it's gonna definitely wax and wane a little bit. But for the next decade, I know for a fact it's gonna remain strong, right? Because a lot of people are gonna be
Hmm.
flowing to the dollars while a lot
Of
of these
course.
economic turmoil is going on. So I see this as a
Yeah.
great opportunities for Nigerians abroad, whether in the UK, because the UK is still going to be better than what's going on in Nigeria, and this is going to a prime
Hmm.
opportunity to really, because if $1 is equivalent to 1,000 over there, imagine how far your money can take you, your American dollars. And now you have a consistent source of
Exactly.
American dollars coming in. You can buy up land for
Exactly.
damn near next to
Exactly.
nothing. You could there's so much infrastructure you could buy up, and
Which
literally,
is
like, I'm telling you, there's a plan in place. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
yeah,
I can't say
which
too
is
much over
why,
over a
yeah,
plan, but
I
like
know,
there's
but
already a
which is
plan in place. But
yeah, but exactly, which is why I'm saying we should be doing something to get the diaspora
trust me,
back to
I'm
Nigeria.
I'm seeing it. That this is, and I'm gonna just say this because a lot of people are from my other channel. This is part of the reason why I talk about what I talk about on my other channel with the diaspora and how we should come together. Because if a lot of Americans, African Americans, knew how far their dollars can take them, especially in places like Nigeria, meaning the land that America promised, even though it's a lot of it isn't really there. Think about how much properties and land you can buy up and use to not only build whatever business you want to build, but it indirectly helps the local economy there. Just think about how much land you can you can get. And realistically, a lot of people don't know you can have paper money all day long, but everyone knows land is the real currency. Whether you own land abroad or you own land at home, it doesn't matter. Nigeria has a lot of land, and right now people are trying to pay $200,000 for a house. Imagine how far $200,000 would take you in Nigeria, bro. You can
Exactly.
buy two mansions with that shit if you want to, right? Like,
Exactly.
I'm telling you, right? You can
Exactly.
buy you can buy just one mansion and rent it out to other people if you really want to. You can do anything. You can go there and literally, it's literally, that's what I'm saying. Like, part of the reason, because I want to get a lot of people to understand that the gold rush isn't over. There's a new gold rush in all these other countries where your dollar can take you as far as you need to go. That's why when I have people ask, why do I have such high respect for O'Shea Duke Jackson? Because he's doing that right now in Uganda. Think about how much money he's spending in American dollars and how far it's taking him in Uganda. Think about what he's able to build and accomplish there alone. It's insane. Now think about, we get more business-minded Black Americans who are like, yeah, you know what? I want to own properties, but first of all, we got to make sure it's secure. We got once we work on the security, they say, oh, I can own a property here. I can now rent out properties, and I can be in America while receiving income from my rental properties. Oh, let me just go ahead and invest more. Now we have more U.S. dollars coming into the market, and then we have more people enriching
Yep.
themselves. And right, and now Black
Yep.
Americans have a whole nother source of foreign wealth that they can generate for themselves. Real wealth, not this foreign markets you store your money in and watch it go. You can go in there and buy the real estate and sit there, and there it is, right? The money comes in every month. You can take the check, right? So you can see a lot of these things, and all you have to do is just listen, man, there's a lot of opportunities. That's why if the diaspora can, because we, first of all, we as Nigerians who are living abroad, some of us already own houses. we actually own a lot. So a lot of Nigerians first, because as an Igbo person, it's tradition. You got to build a house in the village. You got to build before you start building the city and all these other things. So that's how we is. So we already have our cities done, but it's one of those things where there's only so many Nigerians that can be buying properties down there, or so many Nigerians that care about buying properties down there. We need more. We need more. We need more people coming down and buying houses. We need more people coming down and investing in real estate there. We just need more American dollars, all right? Because otherwise, it's gonna be really hard generating that type of that type of change from within. So there's definitely a lot that goes with it, but believe me, there's a plan. I know
So,
you just went in, but like, go ahead and say the last word, and then we're gonna
listen,
close out. I'm tired, but go ahead.
listen. Look, I'm so glad to meet someone who has the same kind of passion I have, and is willing to give this as much air as it needs. So, listen, don't ever think I'll ever consider you to be too passionate. I don't think in the case of Nigeria that the word even exists. So it's all good. It's all good, man.
I think passion is something that is within a lot of Nigerians, man. I even when I see a lot of people Nigerians, I like they're talking and certain things like that, I can see the passion, and that's why I respect that. A lot of people they call that emotion for some reason, that you're emotional. Like, okay, you go argue with a Nigerian man, they'll show you emotion right there. You're not winning that one. And it is when you argue with Nigerian people, if you're the younger, you're the
Yeah,
junior instead of the elder, and you're arguing back, there's a problem. And if anything, they're screaming at
nah,
you. You say yes, oh God. Okay, sir. I'm
y-
sorry. I'm sorry.
exactly,
I didn't mean it. Now calm
exactly.
down. And sometimes people look at you like, what? He just dissed you. Like, why are you still showing him respect? You have to, because if you want certain things done and you don't want your name be
Absolutely.
tossed in the dirt because everyone
Yep,
networks with everybody, you want to be nice.
yep.
Trust me. Even if they're being dickheads, you
Absolutely,
gotta be nice. That respect your
absolutely.
elders. It is what it is. But, yeah,
Yep.
that's it. But guys, I appreciate. I'm gonna drop you down for a second. Thank you so much for being here, Ola. This
All
was
right.
a very
Check your
enlightening
mail. Check your
conversation.
mail. I'm going to send you
I
something now. Check your mail.
send me
Yeah.
some more, and we'll talk again. I know I don't stream a whole
Okay.
lot on this channel, but I recently just started
No,
time
but
because we had to get rid of that Pearly situation. But now we're
it's
in
all
a
right.
finding
I'm
a
going
nice
to send
balance.
you my
But
number. So check your
all right,
mail.
perfect. We'll do.
All
Take it
right.
easy, man. So, guys, that you have it. That was the conversation today. We dived into a lot. We talked about a lot, but no doubt a lot of that stuff was very important. All right, you can see the same kind of patterns happening all across Africa. Okay, these countries, they're not doing too good, but specifically, Nigeria, because I'm Nigerian and I care about Nigeria, and I see the same things happening there. So if I see an issue in Sudan, I can see how it affects Nigeria, and we also got to talk about it. And not just talking, there also has to be solutions being done too as well. So guys, I appreciate you guys being here. You can be anywhere in the world right now. EM says, can you do more of this content? I like learning about your country. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I put a lot of this stuff on this channel. Like, you will never see me talk. I mean, I'll drop hints of it on my other channel every once in a while, but yeah, on this channel it's just that I haven't had enough time because I've just been like, I've legitimately been busy. Like, even with just, I didn't even know how I was able to stream as much as I do on my other channel right now. But like, I really have to like dig deep and find that, which I don't mind doing because I love doing this stuff. So yeah, you'll see me talk about more of this stuff on this channel too as well. That's it's no doubt. It's a lot of stuff. Yeah, it is very interesting. It really is. Because when you see how corruption works in other countries, right? You can start to pick it apart when you go overseas, right? You start to see a lot of these corruption trends and whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in Nigeria, a lot of stuff that will be it'll be surprising to a lot of Americans. But I think it's better we talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, who else, right? And that's the eventual goal, right? So guys, I appreciate y'all being here, man. Like, shout out to you guys who were supporting the secondary channel. And you know, I appreciate that. Y'all literally could be anywhere in the world right now. And this is what I do on YouTube, right? I get channels that no one really knows about, and I talk about important stuff. But I think that's important, right? And maybe I should do a better job of promoting this. I know I suck at promotions. I probably got to hire somebody to do that for me. But you know, this is stuff that I'm passionate about, and I like talking about it. So, yeah, I think that we can. When the more we talk about this stuff, the more we let people know. Because I'm also doing a lot of stuff on the outside too as well. Again, I'm not the one of those guys that come out here and brag about this or brag about that, but you best believe we have our unions here. We have our plans. We have certain things that we're putting together. It's just we need more hands on deck. So, like, I'm doing stuff on the outside, but realistically, part of the other thing that we need is a media arm, right? We need a media arm. That's important. We need someone who can broadcast a lot of this stuff. Whether we can partner with someone who's bigger than us that talks about African or Nigerian issues, or we build it from the grassroots itself. We need that media arm, right? Because those of you are coming from my other channel, y'all talk, y'all when I was going in on Angry Man, he would talk about how if you want to start a movement, all these other people they move in silence and you don't really hear their movement. That's bullshit. All right. First of all, we need to announce, make it known that there's a movement going on. We need to make it known to people that there's someone out there, there's hope out there, there are people out there who are passionate enough, just like you, to go ahead and fight and even talk about these issues. And when we announce those issues, only then can we get more people to come together and work on a proper solution to solve these issues. We need to announce the problem, whether this channel does it or we partner with another person to do it. Actually, realistically, if I focus the same amount of time I focus on my other channel, this will blow up. Like, no joke. I'm like, hands down, this channel will blow up. No joke. Like, that's what it is. It's just that I haven't focused as much energy just because I've been too scattered with some of the real world things I've been working on and some of the internet stuff. But you best believe it's going to be more of this coming through. Shane said this channel is the future. Shout out to you. I hope so. I hope so. We can only if we get as much people from the diaspora listening, that's my holy goal, and I'm gonna keep doing my job to promote that. Finance Man says you all be good. Finance Man, shout out to you too, man. Like, you a real one too. Finance Man followed me all the way over here, and like, you know, all you guys did, man. Y'all are real ones for real. Like, for real, like like words cannot describe how much I have, like how much respect I have for each and every one of you guys that I recognize from my other channel that are here, even just listening to a whole different country that you guys are. And I don't know where you're from, Finance Man. You could be from Nigeria too. I don't know, but if you're from America and you came from the other channel and you're listening to us talk about other countries, I highly respect that, because at least it shows that not only are you curious, and curiosity is a good thing. You want to be curious, but it means that you're at least you know, you're just willing to listen and stay and hear what's going on about other parts of the world, and I highly respect that. You don't see a whole lot, man. You don't see a whole lot of that. EM says, Duke, my bad, I misjudged you on an interview with Pearl. A lot of people did. I frankly, I genuinely don't care. I mean, there are people who say I did a good job. There's some people who say I did a bad job. It really, people are gonna have their own opinions, right? You can't get everyone to like you, get everyone to, you know, get on your wavelength. But you know, as long as you're doing the right thing, I personally don't like to yell at women. I think yelling at women is weird. Yelling and screaming at women, you know, like some of these other guys. Yeah, and the thing is, I was kind of doing that a little bit, but that's just because my voice is loud and I was pressing her. But like, realistically, yeah, I don't think that's how people should behave. But like a nice, constrained dialogue that doesn't devolve into, you know, petty arguments or even pulling up weirdo documents and things like that, that's one thing that we need. And I think that's what's missing, right? Because you find out a lot of information when you have normal discussions and when you're not screaming at each other, right? So I know it's presented one way on my other channel, but yeah, I'm all business outside of that. I know I like to clown these guys for a living, but when it comes to just, you know, talking about business, I'm all about it, bro. I'm all about it. Shane says, I got a few Nigerian friends who talk about the issues going on. We need more. We need more. We need more talking about the issues. But the fact that there's a few brings me joy. It brings me a whole lot of joy. He says one of them got arrested by Tinubu's people. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that does not bring me joy at all. No, and Tinubu's he's a psycho. He's a psychotic individual, but like, we'll see what happens with his next presidential reign. I don't think it's any good is gonna come out of it. It's gonna be the same as always, but only time can tell, you know. But anyways, guys, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for being here, man. It really means a lot to me that you guys are sit here and listen to us talk about this, and I'll catch you on the next stream. Peace.